Should I tell Lorraine? Should I tell Pam to walk around the lawn?
Yes, I would appreciate that. I don't get to see my son off. I don't get to see my son often. I am not taking any chances. What?
When are you leaving
What do you mean?
for your trip?
Oh, Saturday,
And then when are you back?
Tuesday. It's only 4 days. It's very quick.
You're not leaving with all those holiday lights, are you?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Good evening. This is the Ridgewood Village Council Public Workshop. The date is September 27th, 2023. The time is 7:36. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same, as provided by law, of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin. Here. Councilmember Reynolds. Here. Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
And Mayor Vagianos.
Will you all please join us in a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we go to public comment, I have a short statement I'd like to make. Ridgewood is without any question the greatest town in America. We really do have it all here. And yet, there are moments when we really need to do better. This is one of those moments. Recently, there were 3 separate incidents where members of our community behaved in a way that I find regrettable and completely unacceptable. In the first incident, it would appear that a resident at the last council meeting knocked the phone out of the hand of another resident who may have been videotaping him. I want to be abundantly clear. There is absolutely no excuse or reason to make physical contact with anyone else in this room or outside it. In the second incident, a member of this council, while sitting on this dais, referred to another individual as the scum of the earth. Again, I want to be abundantly clear. There is absolutely no excuse or reason to use that kind of language in this room or outside of it. In the third incident, a resident of Ridgewood published the alleged tax records of a resident family on a local social media site, allegedly showing that they were behind in paying their taxes. Again, I want to be abundantly clear. There is absolutely no excuse or reason for this type of social media bullying in this or any other community. As to the first incident, after consulting with our village attorney, Matt Rogers, I am informed that this council has no authority to take any action against the individual who made physical contact with another resident. Our authority is limited to requiring any person to leave a council meeting when such an incident occurs. Because this happened at the end of the meeting, and both individuals left the meeting at that time, we have no authority, to ban that individual from future meetings. That being said, Matt has informed us that we may be able to beef up our rules of decorum going forward, and this council will look at that possibility very carefully. Regarding this incident, I have contacted that individual, and in an effort to lower the temperature, he has volunteered to refrain from attending council meetings through the end of October. That is the right thing to do. As to the second incident regarding the inappropriate comment from this dais, while this comment is beneath the dignity of this or any governing body under any circumstance, I believe that council member, in an effort to lower the temperature, would like to address that matter personally. This is the right thing to do. Finally, as to the social media targeting and bullying of a family by another resident, do we not remember that this is the community of Tyler Clementi? Have we forgotten so quickly that our actions on social media have very real consequences? Publishing information of an embarrassing nature on social media to intimidate or bully someone who has taken a different position on an issue than your own is what we would expect to see from middle schoolers. And when we saw such conduct from middle schoolers, we would punish them. And we would teach them that this is not to be tolerated. We would never expect to see this from adults, and yet, here it is in black and white. And the family that was targeted, here is a short list of what that family has done for this community. They have coached your high school children for the past 25 years. They have headed up the local chapter of the American Red Cross. They have headed up the local chapter of the March of Dimes. They have headed up the local chapter of the Girl Scouts of America. This list goes on and on. That someone would target and attempt to bully this family is unfathomable to me. Friends, neighbors, we have to stop this. We've gone too far. This is the greatest town in America, and we are staining our community. We can do better. We can do so much better. We have to take a step back from the edge. We have to lower the temperature. We get so caught up in the moment that we say and do things that we otherwise would never do. I am going to ask that every person that comes to public comment this evening agree with me on this. Just this one time. I know we don't agree on everything, but let's all agree that we can do better and that we will do better, because these cannot be the lessons that we teach our children. Not here, not ever. Thank you.
Paul, I'd like to say something. Thank you. So I wanted to take a moment and address what happened after last week. It was comments made by others about the village's hired historic expert that I repeated at the council meeting last week. Some of those words the others used were very harsh and not words that I would ever use to describe anyone. I was caught up in the emotions of the evening, and I very much regret saying them and repeating them. I am committed in the future to maintain the professionalism and integrity that I have tried to show as a council member through the years since I have served the village. I will definitely do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. And now, let's go to public comment. I don't think so.
It is now.
Yes, and everyone, I urge you all to speak closely into the mic.
Hans-Jürgen Lehmann, 234 Union Street. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your words. You kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead anyway, okay?
Go right ahead.
First of all, I would like to thank the council for all the work that has been done to make Union Street safer. My neighbors and I enjoy the increased safety, but are still looking for help with those drivers who treat our street like the quarter-mile drag strip between Maple and Dayton. Perhaps a couple of speed bumps along the way would take care of that. More importantly, I would like to speak about the tone of the last council meeting, specifically the language from the dais. A certain councilwoman took great pleasure in playing to her audience when she took apart Primavera LLC. In spite of what the mayor quoted from the official notes of prior council meetings, the councilwoman chose to spin her own tale of what she might like at Shedler rather than what was proposed all along. She freely spoke of information she had received from any number of residents, though she may not have vetted the information. She did inform us that she herself called people in the historic world, though I would venture that most of them are long dead. Most of her quotes, such as describing Mr. Primavera as a bottom feeder and scum of the earth, are attributed to persons unknown to us. Her comments received rousing applause, and the councilwoman glowed with self-satisfaction. For me, This is a sad example of poor conduct from the dais. I wondered about the trees that she is worried will be taken down. I remember a few years back when I would on occasion drive past Shedler. It used to be a wooded lot that shielded the neighborhood fairly well from Route 17. One day the property was nearly denuded of its trees, and scrub and big lumps of earth were everywhere. This happened during the Knudsen administration, when the councilwoman, along with others, proceeded to authorize the cutting of the 250 trees she mentioned. There was no hue and cry at that time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Hans.
Good evening. Do we still give our address? Frank Del Vecchio, 65 Walther Avenue. So, Mayor, I've come tonight, because the things that I was shown on Facebook by other family members about the family I think you're talking about was I simply thought it was disgraceful. I think we all seem to forget that the council, the Board of Education, these are basically volunteers who've put themselves out there to represent, to do the right thing for the town, and we're not always going to agree with them. Mayor, I don't agree with you on a number of things. In fact, I think I've had discussions with almost every council person up there. I know Shedler is a very passionate issue, and Mayor, I don't agree with you on Shedler, and we've discussed this at length. I don't agree with what happened to another friend of mine at this council meeting last week. I thought that was a disgrace as well. So what's going on Facebook or what's going on in this council chambers, it's not who we are. It was a few years ago, the Ridgewood News would do this In the Spotlight thing, and the one day I was honored that they called me and they said, what's the best part about Ridgewood? And I said, the people. The people. It's not the downtown. The people make the downtown. The people make this town run. And we're not always going to agree. When Mayor Knudsen was up there and other council members were up there were other people up here throwing barbs at her. And I know Councilwoman Reynolds. In fact, I've known her for nearly 30 years. And whatever was said at that meeting last week, that's not the Lorraine Reynolds I know. She's a very kind and good woman who's trying to do the right thing as well as you are, Mayor, and the whole council. So I just really could only ask residents, who come before this council to have some decorum, stick to the issues, stick to those things. If you are opposed to Shedler and you're opposed to what this council's position is on Shedler, vote. How's that? Pick up the mantle and run for council. If you're so opposed to it, run. Instead of throwing barbs or making up these fantasies that somehow there is a conflict of interest from a volunteer who sits on some committee that we're going to bring down him and his entire family. It's such a disgrace to this entire town. It really is a disgrace because they're a good family. They're a good family. So we all need to remember that the people that sit up on that dais, they're basically volunteers. That little stipend they get is nothing. They're volunteers trying to do the right thing and doing what they think is best. Instead, we stand up here and we throw barbs at them or the Board of Education or volunteer boards. That's why nobody wants to be involved anymore. Nobody wants to sit on the board because you're going to get abused or you're going to get accused of something or someone's going to post personal information about you that is so embarrassing for individuals that it's just a disgrace, and it's not who Ridgewood is. So Mayor, council, entire council, I think you're doing the best you can. I really do. And I can only implore you to keep it up and have patience. And to all my friends, because I do call everybody in this room my friend, it's just really, let's take it down a notch. We don't have to ever get personal about these issues. Let's just stick to the issues. And when we don't agree, then we could do something about that by maybe electing new people or voting for different people. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I went over my time. God bless.
Thank you, Frank.
Dana Glazer, 61 Clinton Avenue. I'd like to bring the temperature down. But I
Dana,
think-
if you could speak more closely into the mic.
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I'd like to bring the temperature down, but I think that there are some things that need to be addressed here. Let me do that. Should we get the police? Those were the words of a fellow resident who stood in this very podium when it was clear that someone had just been assaulted in this courtroom. Should we get the police? another resident repeated. And what was your response, Mr. Mayor? Did you pause the meeting to investigate? Did you call the police into the room by pressing, I believe there's an emergency button? This is the response that you had. Excuse me, let's all remain calm. Let's all remain calm and finish up our meeting. Let's all remain calm and finish up our meeting. It is hard to remain calm when you're in a room where violent behavior goes unchecked. It's hard to remain calm when you no longer feel safe. It's hard to remain calm when you feel in your gut that the majority of a governing body does not give a damn about you, as if you're just a nuisance, as if you're trash. Trash. I think that's how some people in this room feel, that's how they're being treated. There appears to be a two-tiered policy towards residents, from my vantage point, those who are supporters and those who aren't. My understanding is that Ridgewood is in the hole for about $20 million, so there isn't a lot of funds to complete essential projects like the sidewalks on Glen. But when it comes to spending thousands of dollars to pay a lawyer with some questionable background to circumvent a historical designation for a sports complex that your donors want, well, that's money well spent, or is it? You make proclamations about keeping things green and the importance of trees, but you have no issue with cutting them down when they are blocking your plans. You are spending millions of dollars to clean up our water system from a cancerous leaching chemical, but you have no problem with creating a turf field that will likely poison residents' private wells with the same contaminant. You demand civility from us and will not tolerate any boisterous behavior, but when it comes to a resident who donated
Continue.
When it comes to a resident who donated a sizable sum to your election campaign and then assaults another resident in this very courtroom, let's remain calm and finish up our business. What is the matter with you guys? What's the matter with all of you? I was stunned about this, with the exception of Councilwoman Reynolds last week.
Dana,
No,
continue, but finish up, please.
Excuse me, let me finish this.
Thank you.
Okay? Let me finish. She was the only one who went downstairs to see if somebody was okay. The only one who investigated it, as far as I could see. And the following day, the only one who called up this resident to see if she was okay. Why couldn't any of you have done the same? I don't understand that. It's mind-boggling to me.
Dana.
So when,
Dana,
when you
Dana.
say, hold on.
No, excuse
when
me,
you
Dana.
say, when
Dana.
you say you can do better, you can do better. Thank you.
Dana.
Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. As is now widely known, on September 13th, at a village council meeting in this very room, an angry resident smacked the phone in my hand as I was seated. And no, I was not videotaping him. I was holding my phone, as probably almost everyone in this room is doing. At the time, a resident was up here giving her public comments, so the attention of the council was on the podium, not the back of the room. I understand that. However, shouting and scrambling from the back of the room made it clear immediately that something had happened. Moreover, the speaker asked more than once that the police be called. What did our mayor do? Did he push the panic button, which is by his chair, in order to summon the police? No. Did our mayor follow up by going down to the police department? No. Did our mayor follow up in the 14 days since then by contacting me? No. For that matter, The only council person who came to the police department and reached out to me subsequently was, of course, Lorraine Reynolds. Thank you, Councilwoman Reynolds, for being a caring human being and a responsible member of our government. What did our mayor do? He immediately and loudly reprimanded those of us in the back, telling us to calm down as if we had done something wrong. He instructed the speaker, who was very visibly shaken, to continue with her comments. And he next told the final speaker that her time had been cut short because they had cut into her allocation for speaking. After that, the mayor went home and let the matter drop. What does this say about our mayor and the 3 other members who have done nothing about what the police characterized as a simple assault? Assault is their word. What does this say when it came to light that a very similar rage incident took place in 2016 by the same bad actor in this room? What does this say when throughout the meeting, this individual was making menacing comments to other citizens, even shouting one's name from the podium? It's a disgrace to the people you were elected to serve. No apology at this point for your inaction these last 2 weeks and that night is sincere at this late date. In all my years of regularly attending these meetings, there have been many who have disagreed, sometimes vehemently, but as citizens, we've all remained civilized. Many of us wind up chatting in the parking lot after meetings and sharing our differing opinions. For sure, no one ever hits anyone. This is the way it should be. Instead, 2 weeks ago, 2 police officers accompanied a group of us to our cars to keep us safe. So why, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Weitz, Ms. Winograd, and Ms. Perrin, why would you allow an aggressive physical action to go unnoticed and unreprimanded? Under your utter mismanagement of these meetings, the courtroom no longer feels like a safe space for us residents. And quite frankly, conflating this incident with 2 other incidents is an attempt to dilute what happened here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Hi, guys. Paul Woodburn, 66 North Irving Street.
Paul, if you could
Ridgewood,
speak
New
into the
Jersey.
microphone so that we can all hear you better.
66 North Irving Street, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. Hi, guys. Hey, Heather. How you doing? Give me a couple of minutes. I came back to say to you guys, 2 weeks ago I was here trying to tell you not to do what you're doing to Shedler, okay? And you did anyways, okay, Mayor? What I want to tell you is before, you cut me off. That's why I'm here, Mayor. You cut me off. I didn't give you a chance to hear what I had to say. Ridgewood High School practice football field, I've had 4 lacrosse balls thrown from their field through not just my living room, my bedroom, and my front door 4 times, sir, from across the field, across the street. And this is what I was trying to tell people. This is what's going to happen on Shedler. I live across the street from the field there. Okay, sir? You don't live there. I do. And that's what I was trying to tell you. The trash, piles and piles of trash that these people were leaving in front of our house because they drop it. Oh, and the other thing, and you know this, Mayor, people call about the fire department can't even bring their fire trucks down the street because they're parked there behind that field. You know what field I'm talking about, Stevens Field. They park there day and night, and it's no parking on one side and just drop off on the other. But they insist on doing it because people come from other towns and they don't know the rules. So not just me, but other people down our street, they have to call the police to have all the cars removed. We're talking 30 cars that park there, and they don't just drop their kids off there. They park there. Then the police department and the fire department and ambulances cannot get down the street because they're all SUVs up and down parked day and night. This is why I'm here, to let people that are going to get this, that you passed, sir, on that other side of town. You, sir, this is why I'm here, that you just made it into a big sports complex, and it's going to happen to them too. And that's why I'm trying to tell them and you and everybody here that what you did is not right. It is not, sir. And that's why I'm here. I have to live with this. I've been living with this for the past 5-6 years. Lights, kids screaming day and night. This is why I'm here. Shedler, what you did, you're going to do it to them. This is all I have to say, sir. Have a good night.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Good evening, Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. With respect to the mayor's comments tonight, I'd just like to point out a couple of things. First of all, in my opinion, it really didn't make a difference what Mrs. Loving was doing at the time she was assaulted. That's like saying that somebody who was the victim of a sexual assault, to throw in that she was wearing a short dress at the time. It doesn't make a difference. It's not germane to what happened. She was a simple assault that occurred. What she was doing at the time of the assault really had no bearing on what was going on, unless she was assaulting the other person, which was not happening. So the fact that she was doing something with her phone, Mrs. Loving was holding her phone, you didn't see the incident apparently, so how can you say that she was videotaping somebody? It's not germane to the point. The other thing I'd like to point out is it was conveniently not mentioned by the mayor what happened to Mr. Glazer in 2016. Same individual, same set of occurrences, a phone was slapped from somebody's hand. It really has got to stop. The other thing I'd like to do is, as you know, there was a police report filed, or to Mrs. Loving's point, maybe you don't know, because maybe you walked out of the building and didn't even know that anybody went to the police department. But I'd just like to read from the police department report, just to make sure that there is no doubt in anyone's mind that this incident did occur. Just because you didn't see it, just because you didn't hear it, doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So let me read from the official police report about that incident last night. And by the way, the report was taken by badge number 168, Jack Knudsen. And I'll spell that name for you in case you don't know it. Knudsen. And the report says, I'm just going to read one line from the report. I was able to check the surveillance cameras in the courtroom, which did show that Mr. X got up, walked towards the exit, and hit Mrs. Loving's phone. On the camera, this incident occurred between 23:06 and 23:07 hours. You missed it, but many cameras did not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boyd.
Christina Million, 530 West Saddle River Road. I had remarks tonight, but I don't want to say any of them. I just wanted to emphasize that any form of physical aggression, especially towards women inside or outside of Village Hall, is completely unacceptable. I'm concerned about the handling of the September 13th incident inside Village Hall by Ridgewood's leadership. I was the person on the hot mic when that went down, and a credit to Councilmember Reynolds. She called me the next day just checking in with me, because I found that whole situation very jarring. But I do think it would be beneficial for each of you to receive professional training in the future for other incidents that occur. I think it would be helpful. I know from me talking to the chief of police, he encourages everyone, if you feel threatened, to just give them a call. I didn't need to ask for permission. I just have never seen something like that. And so those were the words that came out of my mouth when I was on the mic. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. I'm glad you brought up the incident last week. I don't have too much to say about it, except, it's a major disappointment. I think we do need to protect and preserve our residents, just as all of you sit up here on the dais, your residents as well. So I consider us all neighbors in this regard. I worked in Manhattan for almost 40 years, even though I'm only 29, but the math doesn't add up. But I've never even seen that kind of aggression. I didn't expect to see it in Ridgewood, and it broke my heart, honestly. The reason I bring that up is because I do live in the Shedler neighborhood, and I have been vocal. There have been people, and I'm not saying I have been bullied, but what I'm saying is it's an us and them scenario. And I think some of that has been created, and I'm not fault-finding here, but I do feel that when you promise something to a group of people who want it so badly, more than anything else, we are the enemy. I want you to understand that. There are people who have stared us down at these meetings, and I am not going to be living in fear or intimidated in my own neighborhood. I will tell you that right now. Okay? We enjoy our neighborhood. We pay our taxes. We enjoy, right now, the quietude of our neighborhood, which I'm assuming is going to change. Now, there were a couple of comments that were made last week about how this project has been discussed more than, any other council. That's true, because this was a primary project. Obviously, it requires discussion, right? That doesn't take rocket science to figure that out. But I continually come before you and I ask for you to tap into your moral compass, and I don't feel like that happened. And so, maybe I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to say it again. There are people with private wells. Turf is unacceptable. Pam mentioned, the Secretary General of the UN, and we're having a climate crisis, so we're not only cutting down trees, and we went to a leaf blower discussion last week, and the pulmonologist said leaf blowers cause all kinds of toxic particulates, same thing that's coming off of Route 17. So I don't know why we say one thing and we see it one way, and then we see another thing and there's no correlation. It's mind-boggling to me. You're hurting the neighbors in that community. There are going to be safety issues. 2 cars can't get down the street at the same time. This gentleman talked about fire and ambulance and first responders. We have elderly people in our neighborhood. They have to be able to get down the street. It's all going to be rah, rah, rah for these games. And, I'm not saying that there shouldn't have been a small field. I don't agree on the large field, and I don't agree on the turf. So I think you're hurting a lot of people in that neighborhood, and obviously you voted on it. But again, we are all neighbors here. And, to have a little compassion, Lorraine has shown us her compassion. Maybe her words sounded harsh, but I think she was coming from the right place. We are all human, and we all say things sometimes that come out, a different way than we had intended. So, as long as we, I think, learn from it, and all of us, I think, are, that happens in our daily lives. So what I would ask is that we behave like neighbors. I'm almost finished. That we behave, and Paul, you always say we can agree to disagree, and we do it respectfully, and I agree, because last week I was shaking in my shoes. I literally was shaking when I left here, based on what I saw. It's just a sad state of affairs.
Cynthia, I'm going to ask you to finish up.
I'm finished.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll go to our people on hybrid access who want to participate. Jan, you are up. And you're on mute. There we go.
Good evening. Jan Phillips, 234 Union Street. I'm used to seeing the street sweeper or the street cleaner. Usually I'm the car remembering to be patient as I glide down Godwin and I'm on my way to work. Last week, I met the village employee who walks through the CBD picking up litter. Great smile, great attitude, responsible employee. And I just wanted the village manager and this council to know that not every villager who comes to public comment has an axe to grind. Secondly, we are a stigma-free community, and it's not up to the police to enforce principles of tolerance and respect. Allow our police to do the important work of the village, the important work of law enforcement, intervene in domestic violence, child abuse, those sorts of things. These are hot issues in our town. Check yourself, neighbors. If you are vulnerable to being part of gang mentality that ridicules, harasses, and bullies, consider public forums to be a trigger and avoid them. Hybrid meetings open the way for you to be respected and to be respectful. If storming the chamber with the same decorum as those who sought havoc on the Capitol January 6th excites you, be concerned. Be reminded that this council provides monthly office hours appointments for those one-on-one civilized conversations, and I thank you, council, for doing that. Good night.
Thank you, Jan. Denise, you're up.
Thank you, Council. Denise Lima, 319 East Glen Ave. I left early last meeting and was not there for the altercation. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing up the issue right up front. But it sounds like you met with the person that assaulted the resident and that came up today and asked them not to attend through October. But I'm also hearing on the reverse that you did not, or anybody kind of reach out to the people that were assaulted. So I'm not sure why that is, and I definitely agree with the group that we should expect better from our council. So the decision last week about Shedler on the 3-2 vote, moving to a larger turf field, the two different than what we all agreed on the 2017 plan, which was approved by Mayor Hache. Now this vote is resulting in a clear cutting of property of trees for a full-scale sports complex, and it's really not a park. I continue to be livid, I would say, with the council, and have so much empathy for the neighbors. They've become victims, and it's true. This is how people look at them now. It's us and them. I think I've mentioned a few times, I feel like, and a lot of residents feel like you've all lied about, your campaign promises and what we expected. We worked tirelessly to get the master plan completed and collected. With disregard on page 42 about the scenic corridors and views, it says, the Route 17 corridor in the vicinity of the cemetery, Shedler property, and Old Paramus Church is an important part of the village history. I think we all signed off on that. The views associated with these sensitive properties should be protected from out-of-scale visual intrusions. Developments that would be out of scale with existing environment along this corridor should be restricted. Among possible intrusions include billboards, power lines, poorly designed and inappropriate located buildings, and inadequately screened unsightly land uses. I feel like we've just totally thrown that all out, the master plan. Why did we do the master plan? I don't think your legacy is going to be about transforming the property in a positive sense, but disrupting it in a negative way, the quality of life for those poor residents. I just have to say again and again, it's terrible. Good leaders can always change your mind, you make mistakes, and it's never too late. To the village manager, continuing to lobby for picnic tables in the parks. Landscapers, I observed multiple landscapers blowing debris out into the streets. It's dangerous, and most recently, a video and photos of landscapers blowing the leaves down the sewer and pushing it with their feet, and it's forcing and clogging up the sewers. So Pam, I know I sent that to you, and I hope that you do something about that.
Denise, if you could finish up.
No, those were just the two additional items I have. And, I look forward to you guys making some changes, because we can't have people assaulting people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next person, there's no name listed, but it's on the Galaxy Note 8.
Yeah, hi, it's a new phone, and I can't figure out how to use it. To change my name. This is Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. I saw, Congressman Councilmember Reynolds let me know that the footbridge is on the agenda tonight for the capital budget. So I'm looking forward to hearing what is going to be said about that. I also just want to bring up, and I know some people rather remain anonymous, this is the third incident in Village Hall of a person being assaulted since the topic of Shedler has come to light. In all three incidents, it has been members of the sports community acting out against people that are at Shedler. And two of them have been directly at women with big men who are at the sports community, physically or verbally assaulting women that are half their size. And I don't understand why the police are not being called. I do not understand why there is not a police officer when hot topic issues are being discussed, especially since the sports community seems not to know how to act gracefully. And it's very disheartening. And the last time it was, you could hear it. And I do not find it acceptable that this village council does not take proactive measures to tell people from the sports community to learn how to act appropriately. We come in every week, people from Shedler, and we are very respectful to other people, even if we do not agree with their points of view. We have never yelled at anyone from the sports community. However, that has not been reciprocated. And so I do believe a police officer should be on hand going forward when this village council decides to speak about Shedler, and they know or they inform people from the sports community to come, because the sports community has not acted appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up is JH. And you're on mute.
Good evening, Jacqueline Home, 30 Carriage Lane. Can you hear me?
We can, Jackie.
Thank you. I'd like to make a few comments about what the mayor's opening statement was on September 13th, that assault that took place. I captured with my 2 eyes and on video as it spilled into the hallway. You can clearly hear the word assault being said. Then this person, the assaulter, continued. The woman said, "I'm going to the police," and he cuts her off as she's trying to walk, gets in front of her, and then puts his jaw in front of her to her face and says, "Go ahead and hit me," and begins to taunt her repeatedly, 3 times, hit me, and kept pointing at his jaw. I have the video. I would love for you to see it. It was also given to the police. Had this council gone down to the police and asked for those videos before making a statement, I think your statement would be very, very different, Mr. Mayor. I understand that you do not have jurisdiction over the matter. And in that same manner, you have absolutely no jurisdiction over what is said on social media and what is posted. What was posted on social media wasn't about the family as it's being tried to seem or painted to be. It is not about the family. It's about the mayor giving this family $47,000 with a 10% interest on their mortgage, holding a note against their mortgage. And this family being in positions of 2 of the largest projects affecting, forever changing, irreversibly changing an entire community, which is Shedler. This family is representing the billboard that we now face that will set precedents for the rest of Ridgewood for our entire lives. This family is also representing and pushing for the large sports complex at Shedler in positions that are extremely influential. And at the same time, they were given $47,000. It's not about the family. It's about the mayor giving these people $47,000 at a time that is extremely questionable. But Mr. Mayor, you don't make mention of that. I would love to hear, would you constitute this as a conflict of interest? Would you also constitute the fact that you own several businesses in the Central Business District and refuse to recuse yourself? And I understand that recusal is entirely left up to you, but this one smells really bad. And it's not about the family. If anything, you should be ashamed that this family is going through a hardship and you put $47,000 above them on a mortgage note. It's not about the family. My heart breaks for a family that's in hardship. It's about the $47,000 that was provided by our mayor to this family in the time of a hardship. And they're in positions that are extremely influential for two of the largest projects that Ridgewood has seen in decades.
Jackie, please finish up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Fretra De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road. I first want to say I'm very sorry to Mrs. Loving that she would have to experience such an occurrence at a town meeting. It is very traumatic. I was not here, but I have seen the meeting. I had to leave that night, and I've seen the meeting video since that time. But most of my comments echo what Mrs. Rowan had said. This is not the first instance, and it's shocking that 3 women in this have been assaulted in this very room. I would hope that the council would take this very seriously. As Christina mentioned, possibly have training. As Susan mentioned, maybe have police supervision during these times, because 3 women have been assaulted in this room. I was standing in line here when 2 were bullied by a very large man, and it was a very scary moment. I thought there was going to be a fight broken out in this room. So I would hope that you would take this very seriously. It's a matter, I think, of compassion, of understanding, and I'm sorry you didn't feel as if people cared, Anne, but we do care. And I would hope that we can help everyone feel as if they are cared for in this village. I think that's all I had to say. I was listening to Jackie. I believe that may be a matter of, we've been talking about transparency and talking about process. That may be something that we want to consider in what was published, but, that's another matter. I think that more transparency, more understanding about the relationships would be helpful to the public, as this is already now, unfortunately, out in the public. So we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Frecha.
Rohan De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road. Firstly, I'm sorry to both Lovings, because that's a humiliating thing to have to experience. I'm sorry for the community, but the onus and the responsibility lies with you, Mayor. And the reason it lies with you is because on that night, the video is very clear, but previously, when it happened that, I don't know why people aren't mentioning names, I don't know. Is it inappropriate? Because I would mention the name of the gorilla that came and accosted another person here. And on the post that interaction, you came, I was sitting right next to the baseball people, you came and you apologized and checked on the welfare of the child and the father. The children were paraded through here under free speech, even though they were coached by people. They had no idea what they were saying, and it wasn't from the heart, but you made a specific, you took a specific moment to come and make sure, but you never checked on the woman that had been bullied, that he threatened to beat, and would have possibly if another person hadn't intervened. So taking the temperature down, agreed, lies with you. You are the mayor. It lies with Evan, and it lies with the two ladies to your left. Y'all set the example. You dictate what must happen. And you know what? Their actions, pretty much a snapshot of sport in America. Win at any cost. This is not what this is about. It's about sportsmanship. There are times you lose gracefully, but people don't lose gracefully anymore. They're sore losers. So that's why we can't agree to disagree. We have no choice. As I said to you last meeting, we will fight you legally with everything we have. So something else that came across on that video from last meeting was that I noted what you said, but the angles that come across don't necessarily indicate what's happening in the back. So you apologized to me a few meetings ago when you said that I was being disruptive, or you asked me to stop talking. In fact, I explained to you at that time that I'm partially hearing impaired, and I was not speaking. I just heard noises and I turned around. So you apologized to me at that time, but you had already said on the microphone that I should be quiet. So could you please apologize to me on record for the video to let people know that I wasn't disruptive, that you called my name out and you called somebody else's name out, but it was not that I was disruptive. I wait for you.
Please complete your comments, and then I have several comments
My
to
comments
make.
are complete.
Thank you, Rohan. Have a seat. And I do have several comments to make. And the first is, I want to commend my fellow council member, Lorraine, for standing up and saying, maybe she could have thought about this better. That it takes a big person to say the right thing, and I think that she did. And as Cynthia said, we're all human. We all make mistakes. I know I have more than my fair share. And to that end, Cynthia, nobody is the enemy. And I think that that's the point that I have tried to raise here. And we all are responsible, every one of us. Let's all look in the mirror. Not you, not us, all of us, to take the temperature down. I would like to say that the first person that I called the next day was Boyd. Please check your phone records. I called you. I texted you twice. A few days later, I called you again. The text said, let's have a cup of coffee. You were the first person I reached out to. And I reached out to you instead of Ann because Ann and I have not been getting along so well lately. And so I thought that was just the best place to start. Forgive me if I did the wrong thing, but I reached out to you first. And as to whether or not what happened before the altercation, as everyone knows, none of us saw it. I was trying to piece it together from several videos, none of which showed an awful lot. But I will repeat to your comment, Boyd, the exact language that I said before. I want to be abundantly clear There is absolutely no excuse or reason to make physical contact with anyone else in this room or outside of it. And in terms of taking action, you may not be satisfied, you shouldn't be, because it's an imperfect system. But when I contacted the individual who made physical contact, as I commend Lorraine, I commend that individual while he was 100% wrong, 100%. And he knew that we could not ban him from meetings. He voluntarily decided it would be best to take the temperature down. Nobody is the enemy. Nobody. And I think that we all need to understand that in this room. As for this alleged loan that was made, and I call it alleged because I will not comment on to the truth or the veracity of whether or not that is the case. My private finances are my own. But I will read a letter from our attorney, Matt Rogers. It is addressed to Jackie Hone because she inquired of him. She received this letter. And unfortunately, Matt is on vacation, actually, fortunately for Matt. So I will read his words. Ms. Hone, due to the email you sent to the village manager below asserting claims of conflicts of interest of the mayor based on certain facts you allege, this issue was brought to my attention. Assuming the allegations you state are true, so you know I am not questioning them for the sake of this response, there is no conflict for the mayor to continue his participation in the matters concerning Shedler and his interaction with Peter Primavera, the hired expert. I reviewed the local government ethics law and the New Jersey conflicts of interest law. The New Jersey Supreme Court defined the 4 types of conflicts which would disqualify public officials from voting. They are direct pecuniary interests, indirect pecuniary interests, direct personal interest, indirect personal interest. Clearly, the mayor does not stand to accrue any direct or indirect pecuniary interest or financial advantage as a result of his participation and vote on the Shedler project. Additionally, recognizing the mayor's stated close personal relationship with the chair of Parks and Rec, this relationship doesn't create a direct or indirect personal interest and or gain for the mayor or for those persons involved. The Parks and Rec Committee is a recommending committee and has no authority in the Shedler project to vote or decide what is to be done. Additionally, it is important to note that the law and the courts recognize that local governments would be seriously handicapped if every possible interest, no matter how remote and speculative, would serve as a disqualification of an elected official. I can comfortably opine that there is no conflict for the mayor to continue in his participation and voting in the Shedler project. Matt. Guys, let's all try and talk to one another. Again, first person I reached out to was you guys, because I was concerned. No response, no answer. You have my number. You were gone before the night, before I got off the dais. I would have spoken to you then. That's why I called the next day and texted. Please, we don't agree on things. We don't agree on everything. We up here don't agree on everything. You hear me say it every time, every week. Let's just try and be respectful. And so, with that, I'm closing public comment. Does anyone else have anything to say from the dais?
I do. I want to say a couple things. First of all, I'm sorry for everyone with perceiving our response. Being new here, there was a lot for us to work through, and I'm equally as a female, I want to say violence in any capacity is not to be tolerated, it's not to be accepted, and we are lucky in Ridgewood that we have a well-qualified, well-staffed police force. After the meeting, there's a vantage point here. Not all of us knew what had gone on. A large part of the incident spilled into the hallway, and when we left, three of us can't assemble anywhere. Councilmember Reynolds was in the police station. We went outside. I did follow up on the behalf of everybody in the incident with Lorraine the next morning. She filled me in. We are allowed to individually talk, but once that meeting's over, we can't all talk about the incident in any capacity. The fact that a police report had been filed would have made it inappropriate for us to be involved. I understand how significant the incident is. I understand all of that, but there is a police report, and it would be improper for us to get involved in any capacity while they're investigating. So I want to be clear, I am truly sorry for the meeting, for the incidents, for everybody's pain and suffering, and we want everyone to be safe here. That's something that we all very much agree on. When people aren't individually, sometimes everybody getting involved makes things worse. I did check on your welfare through Lorraine. She was very gracious to keep us updated. That was very nice, so thank you. I also want to say, I think Paul and Lorraine both said some big-time things here. I'm impressed with you both equally. And with some of the comments that came out, with regard to some of the statements that were made online and in person, I want to be clear, the Parks Department is not responsible for Shedler at this point. When you come to a budgeting, it's still within engineering. The project is still in engineering. It is not a Parks project, which is why Chris speaks to it and Nancy doesn't. I also want to be clear because I am the Parks liaison, and I find it very terrible when anyone is attacked, and the volunteer that experienced terrible treatment online was appointed to both Paul and I not being here. So on Resolution 2115 appointed this member of the Parks Committee. The motion was moved by Councilmember Reynolds, and it was unanimously approved. And when people want to discuss facts like that, we're available for that. I know that several Shedler neighbors reached out to me. I did reply that we were working on it. I know that all of us in some capacity have had similar conversations, but we are here to be helpful. We are part of this community. We don't want us against them. I'm going to say, Cynthia, I've always been so impressed when you come to our Fields Committee. I don't think anybody thinks there's an us and them mentality. If you want to come to any of the subcommittee meetings, you're always and forever welcome. Clearly, they're open. But I know this whole council, without speaking to all of you, we frown upon any type of violence. And last week was a low moment for Ridgewood in a lot of ways. And I am truly sorry for it. And I'm hoping if anybody has any technical questions about committees, structures, and funding, please ask us. And please try to ask about the issue and not the people, because it just makes it easier for us to respond.
Thanks, Siobhan. Good. Let's get down to business. Keith, Village Manager's report, please.
Good evening, everyone. First, I just want to thank the Police Department, our IT staff, and our Engineering Department for collaborating on the video that was posted on our social media outlets today, highlighting all the paving that was done during the late summer and early fall. Our drone team from the Police Department went out and took some in-process paving footage and also some completed paving footage. So I want to thank all who were involved in putting that together so we could highlight for the residents of Ridgewood some of the accomplishments that we're undertaking. I also am pleased to report that today we submitted the majority of the paperwork for our joint insurance fund renewal. We are also beginning to undertake the process of updating our employee manual, which will be redistributed to all of the employees which govern their employment here. And I also had the opportunity last Thursday evening to attend the most recent Bergen JIF meeting where we reviewed various workmen's compensation claims throughout the JIF membership in addition to outstanding claims that needed to be paid. With regard to my recent visit to West Bergen Mental Health Care, First, I want to thank Mike and his team over there for inviting me to do a walkthrough of the facility. They've now expanded to their second building where they'll be servicing clients directly. And I just want to thank them for the partnership, especially with the Ridgewood Health Department. West Bergen has been a real resource for Ridgewood, and we continue to explore that relationship and grow that relationship as we move forward. I want to thank Councilwoman Winograd and Mayor Vagianos for recently participating in a meeting with our legislative team from District 40, representatives from the County of Bergen, representatives from the school district, and also folks from the Department of Environmental Protection in Trenton to talk about flooding along the Hohokus Brook, especially when it comes to the culverts at East Ridgewood Avenue, the historic bridge right in front of the high school, and also the footbridge on district property. We are working with county engineering and our local engineers here in Village Hall to come up with solutions and address those issues, and also work with the school district on the footbridge piece. I had the opportunity Friday morning to attend the Age-Friendly Conference at Bergen Community College. There were some familiar faces from the Ridgewood community, and I'm very proud to report that Ridgewood was actually highlighted as one of the communities who, during the COVID-19 pandemic, made extraordinary efforts to reach out to our senior community. One of the videos that was presented to all 300 or 400 people who were assembled that day had to do with our senior bus service that's provided out of the manager's office. And I talked to Councilwoman Winograd today about possibly updating that video to increase usership, a little less of a COVID-focused message, but more of an outreach message. So we're going to be working on that as well. I met with Stephen Wellinghorst, who is the attorney to the Planning Board, and spoke to Bruce Whitaker, the Board of Adjustment attorney. We are working collaboratively with all of those boards to work upon the Board of Adjustment recommendations that were submitted to the council in March in their annual report, and make the needed adjustments to any ordinances that the boards are inclined to support that will be presented to the council later this fall. I met with David Rafkin, the head of Green Ridgewood, yesterday. We had about an hour-long meeting in my office, talked about the work that their committee is doing. We also talked about some of the recommendations that are in the master plan document that he would like to move forward, both amongst the planning board members, where he serves as an alternate, and with the village council. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to visit with Monsignor Rosniak from Mount Carmel Church. He gave me a warm welcome to the community. What a beautiful facility he governs there, and we talked about some partnerships between the parish and the village, especially when it comes to preparing for funerals on days that they have to perform those services. Tomorrow morning, I will be speaking at 7:30 a.m. to the Ridgewood Rotary at the YMCA, so I'm looking forward to that, and I want to thank them for the invitation there. We are also working with the New Jersey Department of Transportation to get some answers. I know Councilman White's had some concerns about this. He'll probably address it during his report with regard to the park and ride on Route 17. For whatever reason, the DOT thought it was a good idea to place a Jersey barrier that blocks access to the left side of the parking lot when you enter off of Route 17. That's pushed parking onto the curbs, the grassy area, and commuters on busy days have been creating additional parking spaces at the end of the aisles. I brought those concerns first to the new government relations representative from DOT. There's been a transition there this month in September, but I did have to escalate it to Senator Corrado's office, and I did receive a response today from DOT, and I'm hoping to get some definitive answers to report back at next week's council meeting. And finally, I took a ride up to West Glen and Heights today, where the bump outs that the council approved during the summer have been pretty much completed. I sat there, I observed the traffic flow. It is outstanding that the engineering department was able to shorten the pedestrian walkways, the crosswalks in that area. So a shout out to Chris and his team for working on that endeavor as well. A few announcements. This Saturday, September 13th, Ridgewood Recycling will be holding their Shred Day at Graydon Pool from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. There's a limit of 5 boxes or paper bags per vehicle. The Ridgewood PBA Local 20 on Sunday, this Sunday, October 1st, at Vets Field, will hold their annual food truck festival from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Ridgewood Guild will be holding their Oktoberfest on Saturday, October 7th, and Sunday, October 8th, from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. And Access Weekend will be held October 6th through October 8th with the Access Committee in partnership with the Ridgewood Public Library. I'm sure Councilman Winograd will expand on that as well. And finally, the Chamber of Commerce Farmers Market continues, held on Sundays at the train station through October 29th. That is all I have, Mayor. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Keith. And we'll go to council reports. Lorraine?
Thank you. Thank you. Project Pride, I just want to make an announcement on October 7th. We are going to be in the downtown taking out the summer plantings and putting in some mums and fall plantings. We still could use a few more volunteers. If anybody is interested in helping, it's like 3 hours probably on Saturday morning, October 7th. Please email me at lreynolds@ridgewoodnj.net. Cashaw Shell, I just want to read something from the chairwoman, Gail McCarthy. She says the 2023 Summer Concert Series at Cashaw Memorial Shell is almost complete, and what a summer it has been. The Nerds will be playing on Wednesday, October 4th, starting at 7:30 p.m. Unfortunately, the council will be right here, so hopefully we can hear it outside. The weather is looking good for next week. Bring your blankets, chairs, and dancing shoes. The Shell celebrated 65 years of music under the stars this year with many new bands and new sponsors, and the committee is so grateful for all of the musicians and sponsors who joined us again for this wonderful Ridgewood tradition. And because it was a special year, the Shell Committee added special fundraising for individuals who love the Shell, and it was a great success. Fundraising will still continue throughout the year, so please go to CashawMemorialShell.com if you are interested in donating. If you've ever gone to these concerts, enjoyed them, really consider, it's amazing that we have these free concerts, you know. No donation is too small. $20 from everybody would be a phenomenal donation. Please keep following Cashaw Memorial Shell on Facebook, Instagram, and GroupSpot to keep up with their plans for next year, or email cashawshell@gmail.com if you're interested in joining the Shell Volunteer Committee, because they are losing a few members this year. So they are looking for more members. The CSEC committee met last Thursday night. We talked about a lot of things, but I'm going to just try and save time and go with the big things. There was a discussion about the Franklin Avenue corridor. It has been paved, but there's a lot of street lights that are out in the area. Residents, requests have been made to PSE&G. There was also a discussion regarding additional lighting at Franklin and North Broad, as well as syncing the traffic lights on Franklin. So hopefully that will happen. Glen Avenue sidewalks, I believe we're going to be talking about tonight when we talk about the 2024 capital budget. Bel Air Road, there's a possible double yellow center line that is being considered to put in. A double yellow line is a traffic calming technique. It narrows the lane width and it addresses high speeds. A lot of people have been complaining that Bel Air is just like a speedway. They're waiting to hear from more residents before moving forward because they want a significant support from the neighborhood in order to proceed. Engineering has been sending out letters weekly to various addresses that have corner site triangles. So if you get a letter, it's because somebody realized that at the corner, it's hard to see. If you can't make a right or a left, you have bushes in the way. So don't get mad if you get a letter. Thank you. Let's see. One of the members requested a stop sign at the Franklin Avenue extension, which is at the corner of North Irving and Franklin. So it's that little PSE&G right-of-way that goes to the high school. So a member has noticed that cars are just coming out without stopping. There is no stop sign. Everybody here probably realizes they should stop, but there is no stop sign. So we're gonna get some information on that. A discussion regarding the ordinance about e-bikes and e-scooters took place, and one of the things a member brought up was it has nothing in about motorized wheelchairs. So I know the village manager was going to talk to the village attorney, but I don't know if that's happened yet, probably not, but that's something that might be added into the ordinance. And the last thing was there was a resident that was very concerned about Clinton Avenue. She felt that it was a danger for kids, like it hasn't come up in a long time, and there's a lot of new residents, and she felt that people are driving on Clinton when they shouldn't be, when the kids are walking in the street and they're honking their horns and, you know, yelling at the kids to get out of the street when that's where they're told to walk. So the police department started, I believe, this past Monday or Tuesday to kind of go there, watch what happens, talk to the people, let them know the rules, and hopefully it will be a safe place for the kids to walk. And our next meeting is October 19th at 7:30. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Lorraine, and I echo your sentiments about the Cash Rush Shell concerts. They are a gem, and if you haven't been there for one of those, you are absolutely missing it. So, and with that, Siobhan?
Sure. So on September 14th, Deputy Mayor Perrin and I met with a third vendor regarding eco-friendly turf. The primary holding company is AstroTurf, and they have rebranded, and they have an eco-friendly version called Root Zone. We met with their local rep, who is actually out of Pennsylvania, Keystone Sports. We asked our typical questions. We learned a lot, and they are providing us some follow-up material. I don't have any other vendors scheduled. That is our third. If anybody would like to make any suggestions, as you know, with eco-friendly turf, we're open to that. I want to thank Pam for being a part of it, and she asks much better questions than I do. Trained professional lawyer. I also want to say with the fall Project Pride, which everybody should help Lorraine on, we are still trying to find homes, warm homes, if you set your thermostat high, for our palm tree population. The goal is to take those palm trees, of which we have 14, and put them inside for the winter, and then bring them back to the streets so they can flourish. I want to thank Heather, is our most recent adoptee. The pressure's on. One of those trees is going to live here. In addition to that, we have this kind of commingled holiday pride situation going between Lorraine and I and the Guild, and we are taking the kissing balls out of Signal, and we're going to restore them to the Main Street, and because they have lights and ribbons and they need some love and attention, we will be inspecting them on the 5th and the 6th at the stable. We're hoping anybody who has minimal skills and can plug in the lights and test them are great. For more amplified skills, we're looking at some glue gun work, and we're hoping to bang this out in 2 days and rely heavily on volunteers so our Signal department can work on placing them out. Right now, the goal is for them to line Main Street and to move the snowflakes to the side tree streets. And I want to thank Heather for helping us with this. It's going to be a fun project, and we're really hoping, 75 actual physical structures. If we got 75 volunteers, it would be one set of lights to do. So if you have any questions, that's on social media. I also want to state that I went to the meeting on September 22nd with Paul and a myriad of pretty important people to follow up with the DEP on flooding. We're in a unique situation because we have a vested interest to be good neighbors to downstream, upstream. We have our 2 fields, and we learned a lot. The most interesting thing that I want to let the public know is that there is a plan to redo the bridge on East Ridgewood Ave. That bridge is historic. It's historic in structure. It will be another interface for us in the village with SHPO. And the county attended, and they're working on that. But that's a unique opportunity when we're going to get county dollars to refinish that bridge, to look at the area more holistically. So I want to thank Keith and everybody from the Board of Ed who participated in it. It was a very informative meeting, and it will continue. There were some next steps, and we're going to regroup, and we feel that we have a good working list of people to be at the table. Additionally, Keith already announced about access, but at our access meeting, we had a new initiative come out that Jamie from LSHSA, which is the Learning Services HSA, has rebranded. They're CPAG, and we've been partnering with them because what we've been hearing with the housing and the increase in the special needs population is that sometimes families of special needs don't feel as comfortable dining out. They can go into sensory overload, things as if, Steel Wheel has live music, that might be too much sensory-wise. So we have partnered with the Chamber of Commerce, and we are going to be launching sort of a sensory-free night out for the special needs population. And I know Paul and Lorraine know this, but the whole council is going to help be servers and work, and we think it's going to be a wonderful event. It'll be featured from 4 to 6. It's going to be a benefit to the business. It'll help with the integration of the community, of which we have increased membership. And it will be a chance for families in a judgment, stigma-free zone to enjoy something that families enjoy a lot and don't even realize. So I want to thank Glenn Carlo and the Chamber of Commerce for being so open to it. I want to thank Jamie and CPAG, and stay tuned for the details. The date is the first week in November, and I would encourage, if you want to attend, that'd be great, and if you want to help work, you're all helping whether you like it or not, but it's going to be a great event. And I am thankful to Lorraine and Paul, who very quickly said, yes, of course we're going to help waiter and waitress. Last night, we met with the Parks Department and Parks and Recreation. We had a wonderful meeting after a long summer off. There is a whole series of events that are occurring. There's trips for HILT, there's activities, there's classes. This is available online. It'll be on social media. We are talking about putting something like this in the mail. We too had a discussion regarding the e-bikes and the introduced ordinance, which thank you to Heather for circulating it to the Board of Ed. Everyone was very interested in that. We share a common concern about the e-bikes in the parks, and everyone was very grateful to see the next steps with that. And then lastly, I want to give a double big shout out. Clearly, we've done a lot of paving this year, and people always love to complain about the roads because we have a lot of roads and they're in constant need. So thank you to the engineering department for getting it done. Thank you to Keith, Rich Calby, and everybody for putting this awesome, informative, somewhat of a brag social media, but it's very cool. And it shows people what's gone on, and already people are writing what's to come next. I did want to say that we're not done for this year. We are hoping to do some more streets in town. I forget which tree streets, but there's 2 left on the agenda. But if you get a chance to watch it, it's a really cool effort. It shows many people who work for our village, making our village better and safer, and thank you to everybody who made that happen. And that's it.
Thanks, Siobhan. Evan, and before we begin, I want to know what kind of waitering experience you have, because I'm really trying to picture you with an apron for just a moment. So sorry.
He was making fun out of me.
I was making fun of Evan, that I don't think he's going to make a good waiter for that event that Siobhan was talking about. But let's see what happens. We'll give him a shot.
Thanks so much. So first, want to wish a belated Happy New Year to all of our Jewish residents. A bit embarrassed, I missed that the last time, but to everyone who celebrated, I hope it was a pleasant holiday. Following up on something that Keith had mentioned, the park and ride, this has become a bit of a pet project for me. Siobhan and I had met with somebody at Council Chat a couple of months ago who lives right adjacent to the park and ride on Route 17. She had some complaints around the upkeep of the property, which is not ours. It's owned and maintained by the Department of Transportation, a state agency. Working with Matt Rogers, we wrote a letter to the DOT asking them for several improvements to the park and ride facility. We heard nothing back from them. Then shortly after Labor Day, which is about the worst timing possible, just as everyone was going back to work, they blocked off half of the parking spots, presumably for some maintenance work that they never did, and it's still blocked off, and people are illegally parking. It's just an absolute mess. Again, Keith reached out on behalf of the village to the Department of Transportation. We did not hear back from them. I understand Keith then reached out to our state senator, and then we got, I believe it was today or yesterday, finally an email back inviting Keith to a meeting to discuss these issues on tomorrow morning. Keith, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know I'm certainly going to ask you at next week's meeting how that went. And I can tell you from my perspective, I'm not looking from the DOT to give us a promise that they're going to look at the issue. I don't want to hear that the DOT is considering options. I want to hear what is the DOT doing to fix that facility up. I want to hear concrete steps that the DOT is going to take to open up those parking spots or complete whatever work they're doing so that our commuters can park there on the way into New York City in the morning, and also want to hear what they're going to do long-term so our residents who live around that property don't have to deal with garbage. Very much appreciate your efforts here, very much appreciate you escalating, but please keep up the pressure on them because I really want strong, hard takeaways from the call that we have tomorrow.
And through you, Mayor, I agree with the councilman completely. I think there's a short-term issue and then a medium-term issue. The short-term issue is if they don't have work starting imminently on the left-hand side, they need to remove the Jersey barrier so we have a safe environment for these commuters to park. And then a little bit of a longer term, but hopefully not too long, are the improvements. That left side has not been improved. The right side of the parking lot has been resurfaced. There's new concrete work. It's freshly striped. But the left side has been neglected, and we need to know what the long-term plan for that is, and also if we can add some buffer to address the residents' concerns that the council has brought forward. So that conversation is set for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Wonderful. Thank you again for your vigilance, and like I said, I will not be easing up on this issue. On some more positive notes, I encourage everyone to go check out the library. They finished their teen room. They recarpeted the children's room. Most importantly, all of that was done with private money. It looks great. Didn't cost taxpayers anything. Additionally, we got our new tenant into the Pease building, which is now generating income for the library. Again, not coming off of our tax rolls. Really exciting about that. And then one stat that struck me as interesting when I met with the library this week, in August, which we expect to be a slow month, their outreach programs had over 2,300 people show up over the course of the month. I thought it was just absolutely outstanding. The library continues to be just one of the gems of Ridgewood and doesn't get nearly the credit that it should. It's really, really well run. I also want to thank Chris Rudeshauser.
Can't understand mumbling, or it sounds like mumbling to me, so slow the roll.
I want to thank Chris Rudeshauser, who gave me a personal tour of the Shedler property, the house. I was able to get into the house and walk around the house and see how we spent our $2.6 million. Would encourage anyone who has ideas as to what to do with that house now that it's almost done for completion to please suggest it to the council, to the village manager. Candidly, I was and remain underwhelmed with what our investment in that house has brought us, and I'm very much looking forward to some way to make that house useful, preferably some way that generates income for the village. Because as it sits now, it's just $2.6 million that potentially could have been spent elsewhere. Finally, on some more positive note, as Keith mentioned, the PBA Food Truck Festival is this week on Sunday. We were all contacted, all of my fellow council members, asking for volunteers to go in the dunk tank. I, of course, volunteered, but I'm the only one. So
Go figure.
Exactly. So I get no support from my 4 fellow council members on this. But nonetheless, if you want to see me get wet, if you'd like to see me grimace in cold water, 1 o'clock is the time you get to show up to the field. All the money goes to pediatric cancer. This is your opportunity. Anyone who's disagreed with anything I've done, here you go. You may be lined up behind family members and I suspect fellow council members who want to dunk me. But strongly encourage everyone to come to the PBA food truck. Like I said, all the money goes to pediatric cancer. Wonderful cause. Hope to see you there.
Thanks, Evan. And come on, who's going to miss that? Pam, you're up.
Thank you. The Green Ridgewood Committee met on September 14th, and we discussed electric vehicles possibly being acquired by Ridgewood Water. We also discussed stormwater flood mediation, and I wanted to let you all know that the EAGER program, Encouraging Alternative Green Energy for Ridgewood, is on hold because there is no market. And our consultants are suggesting that we might want to look into community solar. So Green Ridgewood is mulling that over. Green Ridgewood and the Ridgewood Public Library also teamed up to put on a panel discussion last week about leaf blowers, how they diminish our quality of life, how they pollute the air, how they affect the ecology, and how landscapers need them. We had a very good turnout, and we had a lot of residents, a lot of landscapers. It was a very good conversation, and as a starter conversation, and we want to continue it. I've reserved the library for the evening of January 24th to have another panel discussion with Q&A and commentary. The Central Business District Advisory Committee met on September 14th also. We elected new officers. Our new chairman is Steve Del Percio, and our vice chair is Stacy Tsapatsaris, and our new secretary is Rebecca Tatlock. We discussed the Special Improvement District idea again, and also the need to amend our bylaws. The Open Space Committee meeting is tomorrow night at the Stable. If anybody wants to attend, we will be discussing open space funding. I also wanted to remind you that Ridgewood Water will be having an open house at the library on October 16th. And this weekend, Destination Ridgewood will present Tai Chi, 8 o'clock in the morning, on Saturday in Van Ness Square, and also on Sunday, yoga, 8 a.m. in Van Ness Square. At 5 o'clock, the Acoustic Dudes will perform, 5 to 7 on Sunday. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Pam. And I have no council reports from my committees. So let's get on with our agenda. Stu, if you'll come up, take a seat, turn on the mic, and we can talk about a special improvement district.
Good evening. Oh, yeah, there we go.
You're good.
Good. I'm good. I'm live.
You're live.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much. My name is Stuart Copweiss from Economic Development Strategist, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you special improvement districts here in the state of New Jersey. And before we begin, I just want to mention the fact that in the state of New Jersey, we call them special improvement districts. In the entire world, they're called business improvement districts. And the reason for that is that New Jersey is special. So with that, let's begin our presentation. So thank you again. So what is a special improvement district, otherwise known as an SID or SID? It is a public-private partnership. It's modeled on shared maintenance programs, which are similar to most of our malls today. They all share the services, they all share in marketing, they all share in promotions, they all share in cleaning. And consequently, the improvement district is a similar thing. However, it's multiple property owners and business owners aligning themselves to collectively plan for their future. There are almost 100 in the state of New Jersey. Actually, there's probably a little over 100 right now, and there's more than 1,000 of them in the United States. So what does an improvement district do? Can everybody hear properly?
Sid, could you, Sid.
I can be a Sid.
Yes, I know. Stu, could you speak a little more slowly?
Oh, sure.
And clearly? Yeah, sometimes the acoustics in here aren't good.
I apologize.
Thank you, that's all right.
I apologize. Okay, so I'm looking at it as well. So what does a SID do? It provides a variety of different programming. Mostly it helps with capital improvements, landscaping, community services, marketing and special events, public relations, business development, commercial vacancy, real estate listings, public planning, security, visitor assistance, planning programs, things of that nature. There are actually 17 different items in the state statute. What we like to do in terms of improvement districts is look at it from a 10-foot perspective, which means that you're looking straight out. If you're walking down the sidewalk, you want to look up, down, and across the way and look at what's there, and that's what an improvement district works with. There are several advantages from this arrangement. It creates, as I mentioned, a cleaner and safer, more attractive business area. It has a reliable funding source for supplemental services and programs. its ability to respond quickly to changes within the improvement district itself, depending upon where that district is, and the potential to increase property values, improve sales, and decrease vacancy rates. So they've been very, very effective over the last couple of years during COVID-19, in particular working with a variety of communities and putting together special programs to help those in their retail corridors. SID versus a Merchants Association is always something that comes up a lot, whether it's a Main Street program or a Chamber of Commerce, et cetera. A SID provides a steady and reliable source of funding. It's legislation. It's meaning that all properties must be involved. If an improvement district is created, there is basically no free rides. And we're all familiar with the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the people don't really contribute and 20% of the people paying for the whole boat. So that's the difference between an improvement district and a merchant association. There's no merchants, chambers, et cetera, Main Street programs. There's no steady source of funding. It's based upon contributions, and it can enforce the financial participation of all the stakeholders.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch all that. Can you just repeat that in terms, I am interested to hear, I assume it's voluntary to pay into this. Could you just repeat that last piece in terms of how that works?
Sure. A special improvement actually has a source of funding, which means that if an improvement district is created, all of the property owners within that district are required to make a payment.
So we would be requiring those property owners to contribute to the SID?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, and one of the things that is important is that the municipal services are not being reduced and not being replaced; they're being enhanced. So,
and how do you enforce that? I'm assuming is it charged like a tax?
What happens is in a special improvement district, there's what's called an assessment that are placed on the properties, and it's put together by the governing body vis-a-vis an ordinance, which I was going to get to in a moment. But it basically says that in the ordinance, it lists all the properties that are associated within the district, and from there, those properties are sent out an assessment bill on an annual basis, quarterly, and those assessments are brought into the municipality, into the village, and then they are transferred over to what's called the District Management Corporation.
And is that something we would decide, is which properties are required to belong to the SID and which don't?
I'm sorry, what was the first part?
Would we be the ones deciding which properties are required to pay into this?
There would be what's called a feasibility study that would be put together to look at the option of creating an improvement district, and in that they would make a recommendation as to which properties should or shouldn't be in the district in terms of what the boundaries would be and what the assessments should or shouldn't be for those particular areas. They can create a variety of sub-areas, and that is, once that is done, that recommendation goes to the village council for approval in terms of creation of an ordinance, and all those properties are listed what's called on a Schedule A that is part of the ordinance.
Okay.
All right. Which brings me to the phases, is how is a SID formed, which is kind of what you were talking about, council member. It's basically three phases. The creation of an improvement district is the planning, the outreach, and the legislative authority. The formation of a steering committee is developed to look at a study and look at the feasibility of creating the improvement district and whether or not it should or should not be created. Then there is a stakeholder presentation, which means it's a presentation in front of the property owners and businesses that potentially would be in that improvement district, looking for their input and making sure they're fully informed of what an improvement district is all about and what it would contribute to the community. And then finally, there's an ordinance that is adopted for the creation of the improvement district, and the the council has a seat on the board and approves the budget annually. So annually, every year, the improvement district has to come in front of the council with a budget and giving a report as to what they accomplished the prior year, and then the following year, they present a budget that has to be approved by the council. Yes, Councilman.
How do you deal with vacancies if the property holder has vacancies? Can you hear me now? How do you deal with vacancies? Is there a special assessment for properties holders who've had vacancies for a period of time? Is there, I hate to use the word, but a penalty or a vacancy tax provision in the establishment of the SID?
It's up to the ordinance in terms of the recommendations. Usually vacancies in terms of property owners themselves, the property is still assessed, whether it's vacant or not, because vacancies can occur at any time during the year, and it's very difficult. Every time you change or put in a property or make a change, you have to come in front of the council for an ordinance amendment, and that usually does not occur. So, to answer your question, yes, they are assessed. They are included. Okay. Who oversees the improvement district? There's a board of trustees that are recommended by the steering committee members and stakeholders in accordance with the bylaws that are created by the improvement district. The board includes property owners and civic leaders, public officials, and it must have a representative, as I mentioned earlier, from the governing body. A majority of the trustees should be property owners, since they're the ones who actually are footing the assessment. And District Management Corporation, known as a DMC, is so named in the ordinance, and they are they receive a certificate which is filed with the state and acting as the operating entity of the improvement district. This District Management Corporation is named in the ordinance itself, and then they hire a manager or to administer the improvement district and the operations. So the role of a SID is what I call, in an acronym, is CLAP, coordinate, liaison, assist, and provide value. Liaison between government, coordinate services with the municipality. Again, it's not in place of services of the municipality, it's to enhance those services and to add other services, assist in redevelopment, zoning, making recommendations to the governing body, to the planning board, to the zoning boards, etc. It's sort of like a person, feet on the ground and ears, and then reporting back to the council on making recommendations to the governing body and the municipal services that are currently here. Main Street owners, this is one of the things that I've looked at over the years. Property owners cover debt service, and I mean, they're concerned with their own debt service and what's going on. Retailers want more customers to come into their particular improvement district, into their areas and make profits. Shoppers are looking for, goods and services to enjoy. The main streets are an inviting shopping area. The municipality. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
My wife says that all the time. Be quiet, Stuart. Talk a little bit slower. Right. The municipality is looking for jobs and ratables, and the zoning determines uses. However, Main Street owners choose the tenants, municipalities do not. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of municipalities look for this type of tenant or that type of tenant, and they look for something else. And again, it's not the responsibility of the municipality, it's the responsibility of the property owners and the businesses. So they're the owners, they're the ones who choose the tenants. SID programs are paid for. How are they paid for? As we talked about earlier, council member, they are generated from a special assessment. It is not a tax, it is called an assessment. And there's a particular reason for that, because assessments cannot be appealed. They can be discussed in front of a council meeting, but you cannot go to a tax appeal court and file a tax appeal on an assessment. Tax assessments are billed and collected by the municipal government itself, and the annual assessment is unique to each particular property, a SID, based upon their budget and services. Some improvement districts have budgets ranging from $150,000 to over $3 million. The assessment is paid by each property owner, is determined by a formula that the improvement district creates and puts into the bylaws themselves in terms of recommendations of the improvement district, and it's based upon property size, value, location, services, etc. And then finally, there's the cheer. So there's the CLAP aspect and there's a cheer aspect, which is capitalize on programs, monies, grants, brick and mortar programs, help make the corridor a destination through public relations, marketing, and promotional events, encourage partnerships through chambers, associations, and other government entities, enlist community support through different organizational structures, and then revitalize through beauty and refreshing and energizing the community, sort of things that you were talking about this evening already that you're doing in your community and your committees. You know, it's been said through the Brookings Institute that 83% of the net households will be childless in 2025, and the reason being is that, well, the thing is that the Gen X generation, the 33 to 44, want schools and yards, the baby boomers want lifestyles and transit, and the Gen Ys want transit and lifestyle. And the things are, you know, how do you create all those things? And that's what an improvement district is all about. It's a self-determination for the future. It makes it possible for property owners and businesses and members of the community to control the revitalization of their community. And it's determined to be the most qualified and mechanism to encourage property and business owners to improve the destiny of their collective use in their community. And with that, as I said, a special district improvement district is basically a mall without walls. So with that, I thank you again for the opportunity to present to you information on special improvement districts, otherwise known as SIDs or SIDs, in the state of New Jersey. Thank you.
Sid, thank you very much.
I'm Stuart, but that's okay. Just a way of background also, I have been involved with special improvement districts for about 30 years now.
And I did want to say that the Central Business District Advisory Committee has been looking into whether Ridgewood should consider a SID for about 2.5 years. We had several speakers come in from other towns that have special improvement districts like Montclair and Summit. We also went on some tours of other towns to Westfield, to Summit, to see what the SID could do. And it was really amazing to see how they are able to get grant money for new businesses coming in to improve their facades. They are able to help rehabilitate ailing cinemas. They encourage diversity of tenancy, and we saw, I think, only one vacancy in Summit. And also they deal with lighting, furniture like tables and chairs, places to sit. They deal with landscaping. They don't take over the government's jobs. They supplement. And we see that since 2008 with the recession and with the rise of Amazon and COVID-19, that our business owners are really beleaguered. And this is a way for the municipality to help them. And it's time, they are really having a hard time. They are struggling. So we thought this is worth considering, and what we're thinking, we also interviewed more than just economic development strategists. We interviewed 3 other people, and we thought that Stu had the best scenario for going forward. And what we're looking at now is phase 1, which would be the setting up a steering committee where the village council would pick various property owners to decide where they would like the boundaries of a SID to be and what they would suggest as the assessment and what they would suggest as the needed services that a SID would provide. I would suggest starting off small and maybe expanding as we see success. So that's why we brought Stu Copperweiss in this evening. We'd like to, by resolution, go forward with phase 1 to see the feasibility, phase 1 being the setup of the steering committee and getting their recommendation. And then phase 2 would be what Stuart has showed us, the outreach to the property owners and letting them know what would be involved, getting their backing, making sure they understand why we're doing this and the benefit to them. The third stage would be coming to the village council and creating it by ordinance.
What does phase 1 and 2 cost?
So, if I may, through you, Mayor, I'd call the council's attention to page 6 of the proposal that was submitted. And page 6 outlines the 2 tasks, which would be part of phase 1. And then page 8 outlines the fee schedule. The 2 tasks that would initially be undertaken would not exceed $17,000, which is under the thresholds. So the council would be able to move forward with a resolution if that's your desire. But that does outline everything for you, Councilman.
I also have a question. How many, assuming, I know you're talking about the zone, how many property owners do we have in the Central Business District, approximately? I mean, there can't be that many property owners.
I think Stacy Tsapateras put together a list of the property owners. It's not official, but in order to contact them, we did do that. Do you remember? Roughly 40, yeah.
And would the initial scope just be Main Street and the tree streets? Is that what we're thinking?
That's something that, quite frankly, the steering committee would look at, and they would make recommendations. So what happens here is that this is just a feasibility study to look at the options that are available. They're going to ask the same questions you're asking today, and they're going to go even to more detail. They're going to look at what exactly are the properties, who should be benefiting from that, but more importantly, who should be excluded, or should they be excluded, and then to what degree.
Is exclusion only on geography, or is it you can be in a zone and exclude other ways?
It's usually based upon geography. It depends on what properties they want to include or not include. What is not usually included in an improvement district are single-family or 4-family or under homes. Residents are not included. If it is a commercial property known as a 4C or 4B industrial or 4A, which is commercial retail, those under zoning are usually included. But that's up to the recommendation of the improvement district. I've done some in certain towns where only 4As and Bs are included, and Cs are excluded. There are towns where they have 5 or 6 different sub-areas in terms of the entire municipality that are included. One of the cities that we worked with over the years was Hoboken, and they have like 5 or 6 different they have the whole city of Hoboken is actually an improvement district, but there are different assessments in each particular area. And that's up to the recommendation, again, of the steering committee, and then that goes forward over time. The whole process can take about a year to a year and a half.
I mean, my only concern is Ridgewood's not exactly known for low taxes. And, we also have a bad reputation about being able to do business in Ridgewood. I'd want to make sure that the majority of the businesses are on board with this, and they think it's a good idea. I mean, the study, to me, strikes me as the right thing to do. I can tell you, though, for me, the question is going to be, do the vast majority of the businesses want this? Because, again, I'm not looking to throw another cost or another expense against people that want to do business in Ridgewood. But overall, if it works and they want it, then this strikes me something that's worth exploring.
I agree with you 100%, Councilman, and the whole idea is to get community input, meaning stakeholder input, and making sure that they're aware of what's going on. It ultimately is up to the council to introduce the ordinance and pass the ordinance. However, you would only do that, obviously, if you knew that the community was behind this.
And to your point, Evan, and I've spoken to Stu about this and learned a little bit about it, that's why when we say stakeholders, we're talking about landlords, the people who will be paying the bill. So Stu will present them with pros and cons at many meetings.
Correct.
It's not a one meeting thing. That's why it's going to take a year to a year and a half. And then it's going to be up to those stakeholders to say, yeah or no. I don't want to pay an extra X amount of dollars a year in what is ultimately my property tax bill in this assessment. So they're going to make the call. We don't have to follow what they say, but that's the point of this, is to get their buy-in, or to find out that they say, Yeah, we're not interested.
Yeah, they may come back to you, Mayor, and say, you know, the recommendation of the steering committee is that an improvement district for the village doesn't make sense either at this time or at this way or whatever it happens to be. I've been involved with a variety of improvement districts feasibility studies where the recommendation was not to move forward. So again, it's a feasibility study. It is not a fait accompli.
And Stu?
Yes, Sid.
So tasks 1 and 2, the cost for that is $17,000. What tasks and what costs come after that?
Well, assuming that in that first task, phase 1, which I broke it down into a variety of different phases, there are about 13 different issues that are going to be accomplished in that phase. If we go through that where we analyze everything, we look at the assessment options, services, we sort of put together a wish list of desires of what people want to do. There's surveys that are will be given. Then there'll be boundaries in terms of talking about who should be included and who shouldn't be included or excluded. And once that's done, then they will go into use of a phase 2, which is the councilwoman mentioned, Deputy Mayor mentioned, is the fact that phase 2 is really looking at how do we reach out to the stakeholders, what's their input, et cetera. And at that point in time, they make a recommendation, and the feasibility study report is delivered to the council. And if it is accepted, then it's up to the council to, at the end of phase 2, to introduce an ordinance. Once that's done, the District Management Corporation needs to be put together, and when that's put together, they put together a whole board of trustees. They do the ordinance, like as I mentioned, certificate of incorporations, introduce a budget to the municipal council, and they get that approved. And once that's approved, then they become an operational. So that's why it takes some time.
And what's the cost after the first $17,000 in setting this up? Assuming that we, for just a moment, that we followed through to the next step.
Well, I believe the next step would be the next step would be another $17,000 as well, and then after that, I think it's another $14,000 for the final phase.
So if we follow through with this whole thing, it would be $48,000 from start to finish.
Correct.
Okay. And your estimate on time would be a year to a year and a half?
It's really because you're dealing with volunteers and their time in terms of the steering committee. It could be, you know, it depends on how often they want to meet. They want to meet weekly, or they want to meet, you know, bi-monthly. It all depends. But we're looking at usually a year to a year and a half.
And I know that sometimes these are successful, very successful, and sometimes they are not. What would you guesstimate the percentage of successful SIDS are?
I would honestly say that all of them that are in existence are successful. If they're not successful, usually what happens is that the budget is not approved, and therefore they dissolve.
And how many times does that happen? That's really my question.
I think maybe I only know of 2 or 3 occasions that has occurred in the state of New Jersey.
So what you're saying is the vast majority, in the
Are
vast majority of
successful.
instances, they're successful.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm working with one municipality right now who has whose improvement district is just in the CBD area, but they want to expand it and to make it into all of the municipality. So I'm helping them do that as well.
And in all of these instances, it's because the stakeholders, the landlords, have deemed them to be worth the money that they are spending on it, that it increases foot traffic, increases business, gets better tenants, all of the above, correct?
Correct. I mean, it's based upon, again, a collective opportunity to work together to improve their destiny collectively. So it's just, you're basically saying, okay, if I'm a business owner and, you know, and I spend $1,000 in marketing per year, well, what is it if I put together a marketing program that has $10,000 now, but I'm still bringing foot traffic in, I'm bringing it into the CBD or into the district, therefore, you know, hopefully it'll go into my business, and that's usually what occurs.
So simply put, the SID provides a revenue stream so that the businesses and the landlords can enhance their central business district in whatever way they feel appropriate, but that way must be ultimately approved by the council.
Correct, on an annual basis.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other
And
questions?
Stu, we've had discussions about our vigorous Chamber of Commerce
Yep.
and excellent Ridgewood Guild.
Yep.
These are membership groups that do an awful lot for our village. And in going forward, I wouldn't want to step on their toes.
No, correct, correct. I mean, they should be part of the process. They should be on the steering committee. Eventually, they should be part of the board. If an improvement district is created, they should be integrally active in the process. And all the improvement districts that I've worked with, and a lot of them have chambers, they have Main Street programs, which are funded by the federal Main Street program. They also have improvement districts at the same time as well, because they recognize that it is a steady source of funding to create the programming that they're looking to do to help the property and business owners.
So they could decide that they want one carter to come collect all the recycling in town, because right now every business has to get their own recycling done. And so that would be one kind of thing where they could get together and
Absolutely. I mean, they could hire a carter, they can hire additional sanitation services, they can hire additional security services, they can do foot patrols, they can do a variety of different things. I mean, again, it's up to them. They put together a itemized budget, and that's why the first thing we do once we have the steering committee is that we look at and we put together a survey and we give to them, what's your wish list? What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? And then we start looking at it and saying, okay, we want to do these X, Y, and Z things. How do we best do those things? Where do you want to deliver those services? We look at the map. We look at where all the properties are located. We look at what the potential assessment could be, making sure that it is not onerous on the particular property owner. And then they would make a recommendation to the council.
So what are your thoughts, folks, on going forward with a feasibility study?
I didn't know you were going to talk about that.
Mayor, if I may, I have certified with Bob Bruni that we have the available funds if the council's inclined to make this decision tonight.
I'm fine with that. I mean, I was on the CBDAC committee in 2020, and we were talking about it then. You know, we've seen what good it can do in other towns, and I think it's a good idea.
If I just may interject for a quick second, I may have mentioned this to you when we were talking earlier, that I'm part of Downtown New Jersey. It's a statewide organization, and I was here in 2006 when we discussed the possibility of doing this. I was part of what was called a Downtown Business Assistant Team to come into Ridgewood and talk about an improvement district.
And at that point, they said no thank you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't just for me, it was just Downtown New Jersey looking at it and making the recommendation to consider it.
And that was before the recession, before Amazon, before COVID-19.
Correct.
In 2006, you didn't need anything to get more business into Ridgewood stores. You couldn't find a vacant storefront. You couldn't get in line for a vacant storefront.
Right.
It was a different world. So, yeah, I would have at that time I would have said, "Who needs you?" So
just throwing it out there.
Your thoughts, Siobhan?
I want to thank Pam and everybody on CBDAC and Stacy for staying. I think this is great. I think it's a wonderful idea to explore, and I think our downtown needs help. And I think that we can, leveraging expertise is what we need to do. Clearly, Ridgewood has issues and opportunities, and we're not alone in them, so I think more that we can tap into it, the better. I think it's great, and I really want to thank everybody on CBDAC for their hard work, and I want to thank Pam especially. I think it's a good next step, and I think I also like that there's several iterations of steps where this exchange will be forced. So I think it's great, so thank you, Pam.
Ev?
Yeah, I hate to spend more money, but this seems like a valid investment. I'm definitely on board with the study, and I look forward to seeing what comes out of the study and you know what we can do to push this forward if it seems like the right thing to do. So thank you, Pam, for your leadership on this.
I think we have a consensus. I have to say that when Pam who has spearheaded this project, and Stacy, who has supported it tremendously. When Pam first brought it to me, I was thinking, nah, it's another board, another committee, another hurdle. And I will say, she wore me down. And I am completely on board with this. I think it is an excellent investment, and we will get a good feel from our landlords, our stakeholders, on whether or not this is worthwhile to this central business district. I believe, though we don't know, that ultimately they will be on board with this. But I think you have your answer, Stu.
Thank you.
Good.
Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Okay, appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you. If you have any questions, my information is out there. I think you know where to reach me. I'm available usually 24/7, but I sleep occasionally. But thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Safe
Okay.
home.
Have a great day. Great evening.
And with that, let's move on to the rest of our agenda, beginning with Ridgewood Water.
Mayor, we have some routine items on the agenda tonight. We'll start with 9A1. This is a recommendation from Director Calby for water lab testing equipment. We have a planned expansion in our laboratory capabilities over at Ridgewood Water to perform more in-house testing services. We're also looking to reduce our reliance on outside labs, improve efficiency, and ultimately reduce costs. There's also a possibility that we may be able to expand and help some of our sister communities through shared services agreements with testing some of their water samples. So his recommendation tonight is award to Allegiant Technologies of Delaware, an amount not to exceed $137,890.22. There is some backup on why the low bid was rejected. They didn't have a complete and comprehensive bid, and this money is available in the Ridgewood Capital Water budget. Any discussion or objection?
Questions?
Sounds good to me.
Thank you. Okay, item 2 is to award a sole source contract for leak detection services. This again comes from Director Calby. This is a NJDEP requirement for all public and private water systems to conduct annual leak detection and report results via a web-based portal. Utilis is the recommendation of Director Calby, and this is a technology firm that utilizes satellite imagery, believe it or not, to determine areas where chlorinated water is making contact with soil. So it really is cutting-edge technology. This will cover over 700 miles of piping included in Ridgewood's water distribution network in all 4 communities on the public and private side. This will also be embedded in our GIS system. The scope of services is detailed in the attached, and it's a sole source contract to Utilis of California not to exceed $40,000 and is available in the Water Operating Fund.
I have a question. Putting aside that I'm kind of stunned that this can be done by satellite.
Me too.
Yeah. The first 275 miles, and this is not a complaint, was $40,000. The next 700 miles is $40,000. Are we getting a deal?
I'm going to say maybe economy of scale. I don't know.
I don't know.
But I can ask Rich tomorrow.
I shouldn't ask. Let's just buy it and go. So.
Okay.
I did ask Rich about whether this is more or less expensive than what we did last year and the year before that, which were all acoustic. He said the acoustic company has changed its structure, and their prices have gone up so much that this was the cheaper way to go.
Great. Let's go.
Okay, item 3 is to authorize a change order for professional services contract for raw water mains. This has a little bit of a history. Back to July of 2022, Mont McDonald was awarded a professional engineering services contract for design, permitting, bidding, and construction phase engineering services for the raw water mains required to connect satellite wells to 4 of the 12 new PFAS treatment facilities. At the time, an amount of $52,700 was required to complete the work. There was a change. That change was actually recommended not only by Ridgewood Water, but also by the Borough of Midland Park during the review of the proposed pipeline agreement. So this change order would change the amount not to exceed of 52.7, and that is available in the Ridgewood Capital Water account.
Keith, I would just ask that in the resolution, you state the reason for this change order,
Okay.
so that if people look at it 10 years from now, they know why we did it.
Sure. And just so everyone knows, for the public's edification tonight, this will allow for the avoidance of placing new mains on private property, obtaining the easements for the private crossings, and to meet the recommendations that were made by both our water company and by Midland Park. But we can ask Rich to revise that before Heather adds it to the agenda. Okay. Thank you. Okay. We have nothing under parking. We do have the request from the Ridgewood Guild, which was made at last week's council meeting, or I guess a council meeting 2 weeks ago, about suspending fees for late night shopping on Thursdays. And there is a typo in that letter that you received from Mr. Damiano. It's Thursdays, and it would reflect 4 dates: November 30th, December 7th, December 14th, and December 21st.
I have a question. What time is he suggesting the free parking start? Is it all day long on Thursdays, or is it just in the evenings?
So it reads late night shopping, and I believe that's what the request was during the public hearing. And I think the time of 4 o'clock was mentioned at one point.
And does this include on-street parking? Because like in prior years, we've done free parking in the lots and in the garage.
I think they were looking about it across the CBD, but again, council's discretion as to how you want to proceed here.
You know, we've tried so hard to encourage people to go to the lots and the garage. If we encourage them to park on the street, we're undoing the work we did before. So I would just like to have the free parking in the lots and the garage.
I'm okay with this, and I don't have a problem with the 4 o'clock and Thursdays. At some point every year, this council reviews and grants free parking on Saturdays in certain parts of town, and every year since long before I was involved in the council, I would try to explain that what happens when we have free parking on Saturdays, whether it's in one area or a whole big area, is the employees get there first, and they lock up those spots the entire day because they never move. So unlike a shopper or a diner who comes in for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, the employees stay there for 10. And so it is counterproductive for the central business district. It sounds like a wonderful thing. Well, free parking, it's Christmas, we have, come on. But the employees get there first. This, I think, is terrific. And I really have no problem with...
Because it starts later in the day.
Because it starts later in the day. Mm-hmm. So I have no problem with free parking through the whole town, if that works for Bob.
And Mayor, if I may, just to point out what Tony said at the last meeting, and we had a subsequent conversation about this, there was a meeting that was held by the Guild where it was determined that a good amount of businesses agreed to stay open on Thursday nights, whereas previously it's been sporadic. One business stays open on Monday, one business stays open on Friday. There's a general agreement amongst them to stay open on Thursday nights, and this would help support that effort.
And I think that's terrific. We've been trying to get, decades ago, Ridgewood was open late on Thursdays.
Not that long ago.
Actually, it was. It was
Thursdays and Mondays.
It was the Monday was many decades ago. And so I would very much encourage this for the Christmas holiday. I think it's terrific. I know that we're going to be looking at separately Saturdays. And I will renew my objection to that at that time, but I'm completely in favor of this.
Okay.
Everyone else?
I thought when Tony presented that he said this was going to be like kind of in lieu of Saturdays. No?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
So I called Tony after, and and then when I was speaking, I think Thursdays for everybody who's listening, it's added benefit. I think it's going to increase foot traffic. I think it's great, and I want to thank Tony and Trish because I think they've worked hard at this, and I'm personally pretty psyched it's Thursday. I think that's a great day, and the fact that there's 4 is a unique opportunity. So I fully support 4 to 8 throughout, all around. Saturday is a separate issue, and I agree with you, Paul, but it might be an opportunity for us to promote the garage as well again, and say free parking on the top 2 floors of the garage, which are underutilized, on Saturday. You know, the employees tend to like the prime time location, but for Thursday, I think there's massive consensus. This is a great thing. I'm grateful to the Guild, and I think 4 to 8 would be excellent. When are we going to talk about Saturday, though, because it's getting pretty close?
I'll follow up with Tony.
Okay.
and Have that conversation.
Yeah, and follow up with Joan also, because I know that that's it's been a tradition that I pull my hair out every year that we do it, so.
And you should probably talk to the police, because there's always confusion when we free it up in the lots, but not on the streets. People don't read that, and then we have a lot of people on.
I think the messaging of one spot or another, unless it's very clear, like the garage, I think it could get muddy.
Good.
Okay, so no objection to that. Good. Get that on the agenda. Mr. Rooney, if you'd come forward. So just to preface this conversation, in light of the discussion that's been had with regard to the West Glen Sidewalk project, the council asked Bob and I last month to sort of expedite a tentative budget for capital in 2024. So Bob solicited from all the various department heads all of the capital requests that they had. Those capital requests have subsequently been ranked in order of priority. I want to say that this is very tentative because it has been a Ridgewood tradition for department heads, once capital has been submitted, to sit around the table and discuss those priorities and sort of set what needs to be done in that capital year versus the ensuing capital year. That process, that discussion process, has not occurred. But what we've put together is based on their initial rankings, the numbers, which I'll call your attention to the last page. And what we're looking at here is the totals of items 1 and 2, which are Tier 1 and Tier 2 priority projects across the village by department, and the ability to fund those projects, correct, Bob? In addition to the Glen sidewalks, which I know are a priority of the council, and the Kingsbridge repair, which in talking to Chris, I think that's where we are going to land on that particular project. So, Bob, I don't know if you have any other color that you want to add to this, but we feel that recommending to the council at this point the Tier 1 and Tier 2 priorities of the departments as they stand today, the West Glen sidewalk project and the Kingsbridge repair would all be feasible for 2024. Mr. Rooney?
Correct. So,
Bob, into the mic, please.
I said correct, sorry, I was stretching. Yes, we can get those projects in and we can move forward with them. And again, to Keith's point, we still need to give the departments an opportunity to give us some feedback on things that may have changed between the time I requested this and, their views on what's important to them. But right now, the way it stands, we can do this.
Questions, comments?
Remind me of the timing. When would we essentially have this, when could the work start, essentially, is I guess the question I have.
If I may, Bob, I think our intention in talking to Chris, who's been out for a few days on a personal issue, I think our intention, Councilman, is to determine the cost of the wall materials that would need to be built or purchased for West Glen. There's a significant lead time on those materials. We may ask you to do a supplemental bond ordinance this year in order to approve that and be able to move forward with the purchase of those materials. And then the construction aspect of West Glen would be approved as part of the capital budget late winter, early spring, so that once the weather breaks, we'll hopefully have the materials and be able to break ground.
So we could have shovels in the ground next spring?
That is the hope.
All right. I mean, I don't think I'm going out on too far a ledge here when there are a few issues that all 5 of us agree on. This seems to be one of them. So I'm very supportive of making sure this gets expedited treatment and is in the budget.
Right. And you know, you're going to look at this list here, and there are other numbers that are involved here that are not set in stone. For example, Nancy and I are working on a possible PSE&G incentive program for retrofitting the lights on Vets Field. You know, we still don't know what the outcome of the application for Shedler will be. So these other numbers are very ambiguous, but I think what Bob and I are here to report to you tonight is exactly what your ask was, which was Tier 1 and 2 priority projects across the village can be met, and that we can also do West Glen and the bridge.
And I'm sorry, where's the bridge on this?
Last page.
Last page? Thank you.
The estimate for the repair is just under 400,000 for the repair. I want to stress that. And there's been a lot of discussion about the bridge of late because, you know, moving forward with either grant applications and things like that, number one, are going to be time consuming. But number two, there's going to be an ADA requirement. I'm not an engineer, but I will tell you that I find it very hard, having walked that bridge on both sides, that you're going to be able to accommodate ADA accommodations on the street side. The neighborhood side, you probably can, but on the street side, it's going to be very difficult. So that's why I think we've landed collectively on the repair being the best option.
Okay, I know we're going to have more discussion on that. I just want to make sure the money's preserved for whatever we decide. But, sorry,
Yeah, my only question was, after the meeting with the neighbors, which I was not at, I was sort of under the impression from a neighbor that it was half wall, half not wall, and so is there the potential that 1.2 could go down because the bulk is in the wall?
Well, again, we're a little bit on the high side,
Okay.
but again, we're a tentative budget here.
Okay.
But as Councilwoman Reynolds reported out, I think at the last meeting, that we have eliminated the wall in the areas where it's not absolutely
Where the grade
necessary
is.
and where the grade is not going to affect, you know,
So it's like
drainage and things of that nature.
7 and
But the
8.
lower end is going to need significant wall. So that's why we need to budget this year to purchase those materials.
Okay, I think it's great.
And,
So, oh, sorry.
oh, no, go ahead, jump in.
Well, I just had a question. So the highlighted items are like the tier 1, tier 2? Is that,
Yes.
okay. So I see replace Kingsbridge Lane, but it's not highlighted. Shouldn't
So-
it be highlighted?
So it's the tier 1 and 2 as presented by the departments, and then West Glen and Kingsbridge were really council discussed initiatives rather than
Okay.
department initiatives. So they didn't come up from the departments, they came down from the council. So that's why they're not highlighted in the same color.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
And I have to say, you know, this is the way the process is supposed to work. First of all, Bob and Keith and Heather, thank you so much for figuring that we can do this, because the idea has always been, well, of course we should do this, but can we afford this? And can we afford this if we need to buy $500,000 trucks that we need to do our business every day? So, you know, this is really a great piece of work. I know that the plan currently is to buy the blocks for West Glen sidewalks this year, so that we.
Let me correct you, order them.
Order
this
them,
year. Yes.
order them, because they take a while to come in, so that we will have them. So this is a really great plan. I want to thank Lorraine, who has been staunch in her pursuit of getting West Glen done, and she's always been right on this, because it is clearly a safety issue. It's shocking to me that this has not been done decades ago. And the Kingsbridge Lane Bridge is not something that we can have boarded up for years to come. And it's always been a financial crisis. And when we spoke to Keith and Bob, it was, can you find the money to do this? And you did. And we know that you've worked with department heads and that this is all preliminary, but this is really good news. And I also want to thank the members of the public who came here asking and insisting that we get to this. Because, as I always say, we need input. We need to know what's going on. It means maybe we'll agree with you, maybe we won't agree with you, or maybe we have the money, maybe we don't have the money. But unless we have that microphone going at every meeting, we can't know everything in town. So really, this is something that I'm so happy with the way the process worked.
I just have one question. The bid for the bridge, is it still valid? Because that was prior to my time.
So Chris did ask for an estimated proposal.
Okay.
Cost estimate from the bridge engineer. Keep in mind, this is not an in-house project.
Right, right,
because
right.
we don't generally build bridges. So we have to hire a professional service to do that.
Right.
But they sharpened their pencil on what they provided to Chris.
Okay, and do we have to go back out or do anything from our side here?
Well,
on
right
the
now, it's
agenda?
just an engineering estimate. I mean,
Okay.
it will likely have to go out to bid, to
Okay.
formal bid, for the company the construction company to come in and do it. But we have a rough estimate revised from the bridge engineering firm.
Okay.
Okay.
Great, let's move on.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I got one last question.
sorry.
Sorry. So on the Shedler Park improvements, I see it's 0 for 2024? They're not requesting anything?
So based on the fact that the village councilwoman just approved the concept plan, and we still have to go through the SHPO application as that presents itself, with that will come cost estimates that would actually give us an idea of what's going to go there based on how that plan is impacted by SHPO or any other changes that would be made in the future. So we really can't estimate in talking to engineering what that number is until we go through that process. So that's an open question as we head into the capital budget season for the beginning of '24.
So like if that becomes a $2 million item, then we got to take $2
Well,
million out of
and in
someplace else.
light of where we stand today, with the action that the council took at the prior meeting, I've asked Bob to assemble where we are on Shedler, because to be honest with you, I'm relatively unfamiliar with it, as far as what funding has been appropriated in the past, what those bonds were allocated for on the property. So that whole process is a work in process. Or a work in progress, I guess I should say, since the council took the action that they did at the last meeting, and now we're responding to that accordingly.
We do
Okay.
have a ton of carryover capital that was earmarked, even from before when I got here, Evan and I, so.
Right, no, I
We-
think
you-
it's
you
like
guys-
1
I think when we took our
1.9
seat,
million,
there was
right?
1.9 million, and we added 500 last year, so we're roughly around 2.3, roughly. So, we put that together. So the carryover capital prior to us arriving here was just shy of 2, and I think we only allocated 5. And
The '23 capital budget included $500,000. That I'm familiar with.
And when we got here, it was roughly, like, at the end of the campaign, 1.9.
Right, but if we need, Bob, if we are going to purchase some of the wall block for West Glen in 2023, will that money come from the 500,000 that was allocated for Shedler?
You need to reintroduce the ordinance. But go ahead, Bob.
Right. And the other part of this is we're dealing with a lot of unknowns. When Jovan made his presentation, he anticipated that there'd be availability of these stones. I have no idea actually where that is. He has to look into it. That may get pushed out to '24. I don't know the answer. So there's some of these pieces that engineering is going to have to provide so we can make a determination as to how we're going to move forward.
But if we did need it in 2023, do we have the money to purchase it?
Yes.
Okay. And where would that come from?
There's money in these capital ordinances. The way they're structured, they can be interchanged depending on what we're using
That's what I
for.
was getting at. So the 500,000 we put aside for Shedler could actually be used for this if we needed it.
Yes, because the way of the ordinance, the way it's written, it puts it in groups and projects.
Right.
So that's a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
All good? Let's move on.
Okay, item C2 is award of contract for laboratory analysis services for the water pollution control facility and Graydon Pool. We received 2 responses.
Thank you, Bob. Sorry.
We received 2 responsive bids for this, and Chris is making a recommendation for an expenditure of $49,901 to Eurofins Environmental Testing, LLC. This is coming from the 2024 operating budget in preparation for purchasing these goods next year. Any objection?
I don't object, but there's something I don't understand. I'm looking at the proposal, schedule of laboratory analysis. For instance, it says, number 3, weekly wet chemistry analysis, $65 each, and it's going to be $104. That's twice a week to me. I don't know. I didn't understand the numbers.
I can't explain that, but when Chris returns, Councilwoman, or Deputy Mayor, I can ask that question for you.
Okay, I don't object to it, though.
Okay, item 3 is furnishing and delivering of various solutions for the water pollution control facility. We've received 3 responsive bids for this. One of the bids was incomplete. Miracle Chemical has been our past vendor and was the successful vendor this time as well. And Chris is making a recommendation for not to exceed $156,239 to fund the chemical purchases budgeted for 24 operating.
Questions? Good?
Okay. Next item is the expansion of the 2023 road resurfacing and various repairs of village streets. This dates back to an award of contract from February of 2023. We were recently notified by the New Jersey Department of Labor that one of the companies, American Asphalt and Milling Services, is in the process of being barred from working for public agencies. So Chris is recommending that we reallocate those funds and award it to Smith Sunday, who has been our village contractor on road resurfacing. We would still be working with the same amount of money that was appropriated back in February, but we'd still have available funding of $614,000. And to answer Councilwoman Winograd's question from earlier, we have additional streets that would be paved if this were to be approved tonight upon Chris's recommendation. Chestnut Street from East Ridgewood Avenue to Franklin. Chestnut from Douglas Place to the end at the apartment buildings. Cottage Place from East Ridgewood Avenue to Franklin. Dayton Street from Maxow Circle to Union Street. North Walnut Street from East Ridgewood Avenue to Franklin. South Walnut Street from Dayton to East Ridgewood Avenue. Oak Street from East Ridgewood Avenue to Franklin. Alban Court, the entire skipping Banta. Brookmere Court from Horseshoe Railroad, North Maple Avenue, and Lynn Street from Franklin Turnpike to Racetrack Road. So it would be those 10 streets that we would attempt to pave in the fall. Okay.
I have a question. You didn't mention West Saddle River Road, correct?
I did not. I think that was not in the budget for this, and these streets had been planned to be done by the aforesaid paving contractor. So these were slated in the 23 plan. The action that needs to be taken by the council tonight is moving from one vendor to Smith Sunday.
Okay, because that road is really bad.
Right, and I've communicated with the residents there in multiple emails. I think there are 2 issues at play, and I'm just talking from an administrative standpoint. One is I've committed to them that I will press engineering to include that in the 2024 capital road resurfacing. But there is the outstanding factor of whether or not there would be bump outs in that road if the Shedler project was to move forward as the council approved the concept plan 2 weeks ago. If that's the case, that may delay it till closer to the end of next year. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen in '24, but it's much more efficient to pave the whole thing curb to curb than it is to pave those bump outs as a separate work effort. The lifespan of the road is not going to be as long. So, but I did commit to them that I would press engineering in our work sessions that we'll have about the '24 capital budget to have West Saddle River Road included in the '24 capital plan.
Is there any kind of repair, pothole, it's just so bumpy. Is there anything we could do this year to alleviate?
I can talk to Chris about what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
And then, Keith, the only thing is that the tree planting is going on in the fall as well. So we sent a note to Declan and engineering. I just want to make sure
So-
if we cannot bump into the trees being planted with
So
the
part
pavement.
of, I don't know exactly what the schedule looks like, but I can tell you that on the streets that have dining corrals, which is another item on the agenda tonight, if the council approves the extension of the dining corrals till the end of October, the streets that have dining corrals will not be paved until the first week of November, weather permitting. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Any objection to this?
Anybody else? Good.
Okay. Okay, next is authorize a change order, replacement of headworks equipment, screening and grit removal at the water pollution control facility. This is some damage that was done to the facility back during Hurricane Ida in September of 2021, which destroyed the bar screens and the headworks equipment in the screening and grit removal section of the building. It did render us inoperable for a period of time. Rapid Pump has reviewed the situation and gave us a quote of an initial amount of $1 million. That was approved by Resolution 22-311 to start manufacturing the replacement headworks that were necessary for the facility. Rapid Pump was awarded a second part of that bid in November, by Resolution 23-214. And during the course of work, it was discovered that 2 of the existing pumps in the GRIP building are obsolete and need to be repaired. Rapid Pump's quote for that is $13,350. And Chris is making a recommendation of a change order in that amount, and it is available in one of the capital accounts for sewage removal.
Questions, anyone?
Okay. Next, we have a application from a disabled American veteran for a tax exemption. This matter has been reviewed by finances and being recommended by the tax collector. Any objection to a resolution on that? Okay. Next is under policy. We have a memorandum that I asked Chris to write with regard to the flexible sidewalk initiative that was undertaken. He did make recommendations after a year. However, his conclusion, and he and I talked about this before he was out, was that without having a real heavy snow year and having such a light snow year as we had last winter, it is truly hard to do a full assessment of the impact and the condition of these types of sidewalks throughout the village. So he did want me to note that for the village council.
So I have a question on the pictures. Are they their current oh yeah, September 22nd.
September, yep.
Because in his memorandum, he says they look old and tired, light gray in color, but in the pictures, they look black. But what I'm getting at, I think they would look better if they were light gray and kind of matched the concrete. Are there any other color possibilities with this material?
I seem to remember there were lots of color possibilities.
Yeah. Because if we could choose a color that would match the concrete, it seems that would be the way to go.
Well, it wouldn't look like we're filling in sidewalks with paving material.
Right.
Which is what it looks like here.
I can talk to Chris about that. Again, I just think it's hard to give an ultimate assessment of this just based on the light winter, which we all valued last year from an operation standpoint.
And I see that a resident requested to be participating in the pilot program. So I don't know if that's up for discussion today. It's in our packet. So is that something we're looking at or considering or not considering?
I guess that question is really posed to the council. Do you want to continue the pilot program as was started and just add this location into it and then give it another year and then do an assessment? We'll see what our winter looks like.
What do you guys think?
I would say if we can make it a color that's more close to the sidewalk, yeah, I would definitely go for it.
I would say, in full disclosure, I know this homeowner, and I think that they would be a wonderful family to help us. Their son has been active in Shade Tree. They're deeply committed to the tree. they're versed. I think it would be good to get more people. I don't think there's a decision to be made about going that much further. It's in the same area, too.
Right,
There-
it's
so
also on
that's-
South Irving.
Yeah. I would say, yes, we should do it. I think it seems like a good idea, but without a cold winter, we're not really sure. You know, one shovel can kick a root if someone hits it too hard, and we don't know if we've damaged the tree.
I think to do one more property is
When do that?
manageable. I think if we had 10 of these, maybe we'd have to assess the practicality of doing that without knowing how this is going to turn out in the long term.
You probably also have to come up with some kind of policy, so that it's not just people who happen to know about it and they
Mhm.
write in and
Sure.
say, I want to do it too, because then how are you picking and choosing? You know, and is the village going to pick up 50% of the cost again? Or are we going to assess it to the homeowner completely? That's another policy decision that the council has to make.
And to Heather's point, if any family in town was replacing their sidewalk, it would be on them to replace their sidewalk. Am I correct in saying that? So here, we would be doing it maybe as part of a pilot program, but I don't know that we want to get into the business of replacing people's sidewalks, either with concrete or with this special surface.
Well, I don't remember, and Chris is not here. Was
Right.
this more expensive than regular concrete?
Oh, significantly, at least double.
So then the request here is that the estimate was for $4,000. So this resident is asking for the same thing that, and these were all done on South Irving, is saying, I'll go the extra money if the village will go in with me. And if not, then I'm sure they'll just go for the regular concrete, which I would think is significantly less expensive.
And then there's the weighing of the impact on the tree.
Right.
That's
Right.
the incentivization, is that the
Right.
shade tree stays in place.
Right. I agree with you completely, Heather, and I don't know what the answer is to that. I mean, this seems like a good idea to give another homeowner an opportunity to do this. Are we opening up the floodgates?
I mean, moreover, I mean, this is not a particularly positive review of this. Why are we looking to expand it now? I mean, he's saying at best that he's unsure if this is a good idea. I mean, and I don't know if I want to weigh into the, well, if we let this homeowner do it, then somebody else wants to do it. Now we've got more of this. We don't know if it's a good idea. I don't know until we feel good that this is the right thing to do. Why are we doing more of it?
The other option is to sort of set the unofficial policy tonight that we're not gonna do anything new, but we're gonna wait a year and do another assessment once we've been through a winter that gives us good data.
That's what I would suggest.
In this instance, so, I mean, and again, that's fine, and I'm really not sure where I fall on this. If this is to save one shade tree, I don't know how big their tree is or whatever, but it wouldn't be a bad thing. And the floodgates are not yet open. So I'll defer to the rest of the council, whatever your pleasure is on this.
I'd like to know what Matt says other towns are doing. Are they relieving homeowners of their duty to maintain the sidewalks in part, or 50%? Are other towns doing this?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so I'd like to know, can we ask Matt to research that?
So let's kick it to our next meeting?
Okay. Yeah, give us a little time to do
Good.
some research. Okay.
Punt.
And lastly, the request for the extension to the end of October for the dining corrals. If that's the desire of the council, we would need to adopt a resolution at our next public meeting.
What's your pleasure? Thoughts?
So actually, just Lorraine and I were at a meeting, and the current resolution expires, it was us, right? You knew?
Yeah, I don't remember it.
It was, it's October 11th, and so we needed to act on that. I do think that this is a very nice time, it's sort of prime time, but we're getting close to where it's gonna get cold, and we asked for it to be placed on the agenda to see how far we wanna go with this. I think Halloween would be lovely. I think October 11th, as it's written, is too early, but I'm open to any and all discussion. I mean, did you have anything? I'm trying to remember where we were when we found this out.
You know, I worry about the streets being able to be paved, and I think we have to weigh, will the dining corrals really be used, you know, in mid to late October if we extend it? I rarely see, you know, a Friday night is one thing, but I rarely see people in the dining corrals, you know, when I pass by.
They have been, and again, it has not been a typical summer. It has not been as busy as it normally is, but it is always a Friday, Saturday phenomenon. And so that is when the restaurants can use additional seating outdoors. And October will be whatever the weather determines it to be. If, as we all know, if it is beautiful fall weather, everybody sits outside.
Right.
It's the best time of year. If it
It
gets
does seem to be an colder early. Whether the trend is going to continue, who knows?
and here, I mean, you know, the weekend and last week were cold. I know the weather like the back of my hand because it's my business. We're going to have a day that hits 80 this week.
Right, of
so,
course.
you know, again, what's it going to be in 3 weeks? Nobody knows.
Right.
I think we've gone this far. Another couple of weeks is the right thing. I know that Keith has spoken to Chris about paving, because that was really the critical issue.
Right.
And
He scheduled Smith Sunday, assuming this resolution passes, to be able to pave the first week in November.
So paving is not an issue on this.
I mean, again,
As long as the weather
if it
is
snows on
okay.
November 1st, don't hold me to it, but generally speaking, if all goes well, we'll be able to accommodate both initiatives.
You obviously don't know how this job works.
It sounds like there's no real downside here. I don't see a downside by extending it a couple extra weeks. The paving has now been accommodated. I think Lorraine makes a good point. It sounds like we've dealt with that. I'm willing to roll the dice that we don't have a snowstorm on November 1st. So I don't see a downside to extending this a couple extra weeks if it helps our businesses.
It's also, I mean, Keith, do you know at what temperature they can't pave any longer?
They have been paving to mid-November. You know, it really is dependent on when the asphalt manufacturing companies shut down. But these contractors will pave right up until that time that the material's not available.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So are we cool with keeping it on to Halloween?
Good.
Okay.
Good.
10:31. And
Great.
for the record, it's going to be 76 degrees when Councilman White's is in the dunk tank on Sunday. Because when he said it, I looked it up just to
What's
see
the water
how warm it
temperature,
was going
though?
to
It's
be.
the water temperature that matters.
The water temperature is the killer.
Mayor,
So,
that concludes my portion of the agenda.
great. Thank you, Keith.
Can I
Thank-
just get one piece
By
of
all means.
clarification so I can write the resolution correctly? So Halloween is like a Tuesday, I think.
We could do it Monday.
So Monday, they could take it down,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't
Absolutely.
make sense
No,
to
no.
extend it to
The Mon-
Tuesday.
the Monday is
Should
definitely-
Sunday be the last day?
Right, right, that's what I'm gonna.
They
put
can
in the
take them down
resolution.
Sunday night.
Wow, it'll be
Or
Monday
wh-
morning.
whatever-
It'll
whatever.
be
Yeah, then they
morning.
could pay
Right.
on
Whatever
Monday.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Good. And now we will come back to public comment.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Mr. Paul Woodburn of North Irving Street, was up here before talking about parking near his home across from Stevens Field, which reminded me that I wanted to bring to particularly the manager's attention that, as those of you who've been living in Ridgewood for a long time know, the Village of Ridgewood owns the old public service right-of-way between North Irving Street and East Ridgewood Avenue. There are currently signs posted on the utility poles there that no parking is allowed at that location. However, for the past several years, particularly for athletic events, the village has looked the other way and allowed people to park there. It is against the ordinance, but yet we've looked the other way and allowed people to park there. I believe the reason for that is that it alleviates street parking, particularly on Overbrook Road, Fairway, and the residents in that area are free to move in and out without cars blocking their driveways and things like that. So on the surface, it seems like a good idea. However, there is an ordinance that prohibits parking at that location. If you are going to continue to allow parking there for athletic events, I think you need to adopt an ordinance that permits it. I've also got a concern about safety along that particular piece of property. For those of you who are familiar with it, there are a number of potholes, water collects. I'm concerned that somebody is going to have a pedestrian-type accident at that location, and the village may be part to a lawsuit as a result. So I would ask at this time that there be some consideration given to whether you want or don't want to allow parking at that location for athletic events, and if you do want to allow parking, to adopt an ordinance that permits such, and also to take a look and see what improvements should be made, if any, to that area to facilitate parking. Now, I also remember that Mr. Rudishauser indicated that because there is an entrance from East Ridgewood Avenue, and that is a county road, that there would be some county approvals perhaps required if you were going to allow entrance and exit via that gate. So there are a number of things to consider if you're going to continue to allow parking there. Again, right now there are signs posted that no parking is permitted. I certainly understand why you would want to allow parking there, because it frees up problems that occur when people park on Overbrook Road and some of the other streets, but it needs to be made legal if you're going to continue to do it. Another observation I have, and it's, really don't want to mention this, but there are literally, it seems like, dozens and dozens of street signs missing throughout the village. Apparently there was a TikTok challenge sometime during the summer, and somebody has stolen street signs, particularly in the Heights section and the Old Country Club section. Unconfirmed reports are they now decorating college dormitories. Although many of us have GPSs in our cars, I was out delivering some materials the other day, and it is somewhat annoying not to know what street you're on without looking at your GPS. So I'm wondering if there is a plan in place to replace those signs, and if so, if they are replaced, if there's going to be some sort of device put on them so that they can't be taken off with a wrench very easily any longer. Again, there are dozens of them missing. It seems like every other block in the Heights, the signs are missing. Again, a TikTok challenge, I understand, is responsible for that. Last thing I want to mention with respect to the manager is ordinarily in September or October, the manager gives a report as to how attendance at Graydon was during the summer. If we could have such a report in October, that would be great. Many of us who love Graydon would like to know how well it did this year and if it's going to be continuing into future years. Finally, I would like to say that there was a comment made from the dais about we're not in middle school any longer. I would say that to suggest that calling someone's husband and not calling the person directly is like middle school. And to me, it's a cop-out. You know her phone number. You could have called her directly. I don't buy into the, well, we're not getting along, so you called me. In the future, do not call me if you have a message for her. Call her. It's insulting to women when you say, I called your husband. I didn't want to call you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boyd.
Good evening again. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I walk on those flexible sidewalks every single day. I love them. I just love them, and I don't think they look bad, and I don't think they look worn out. They're just down the block from me. And if they save trees, I think it's a great thing. I do want to say that the mayor's initial statement, where 3 things were conflated into one bad week or one bad 2 weeks, was really inappropriate. Councilwoman Reynolds was quoting someone else. Maybe she made a mistake in quoting what they said, in deciding to quote what they said, but those were not her words. Then there was an assault that was publicly documented, and then there was a loan that the mayor made to an attorney who's representing the monster billboard. I think that putting these 3 things together as like, well, we had really a bad series of things is really wrong. They're 3 very separate incidents that happened. I know my husband mentioned it, but it is ridiculous to suggest that calling my husband is the same as calling me. We are not the same person. He is a black man. I am a white woman. I'm all for gender blind and colorblind, but come on. That was really insulting. It was also insulting that not once during your lengthy deflection, not once this evening, did you apologize for your total inaction. And moreover, your suggestion that I was filming Mr. Delzio somehow, which I was not, somehow seemed to be an attempt to put the blame on the victim, that because I was filming him, that was his justification. I wasn't filming him, and even if I was, there's no justification. So don't throw that in as some sort of way to blame me. Apparently, Mr. Delzio has volunteered to miss 3 meetings. I assume there's 3 in October. I will tell you that if he comes into this room, and I miss almost no meetings, if he comes into this room, it will be threatening. His presence will be somewhat threatening to me and some other people here. Finally, regarding the loan, this was not a loan to a random couple. One person in the couple is an attorney representing a zoning board application for a billboard that the mayor has stated he's in favor of. The other member of the couple is the chair of the Parks Rec Conservation Advisory Committee, which makes recommendations, most recently in April, on expenditures at Shedler, which is another project that the mayor is in favor of. They've received a sizable loan from the mayor, and they're speaking in favor of 2 projects that the mayor supports. So please stop suggesting that the publication of this public document was an attack on a random couple. It was a revelation about the mayor. That's what it was about. It was a revelation about the mayor. And the last thing is, if you're going to write a modification about behavior in the council meetings, it can't be as simple as nobody's allowed to touch anyone at any time. That's absurd. I mean, people shake hands, people clap each other on the back when somebody gets promoted or, you know, joins the police force. You can't make a rule like that, that there's to be no touching at any time. It's very simple. There's to be no violence, no physical violence or bullying in this room. But to say you can't touch is like when a parent says, that's it, you're grounded for the rest of your life. I mean, don't make an absurd, I mean, you're obviously not going to do it because it's unconstitutional to say that you can't touch. I can touch that person that you confuse me with whenever I want to. I can, you know, shake hands with a friend if I want to. So that's all I have to say this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. I just wanted to address a few points. So I know, Shaban, you're talking about turf this evening, and, you know, from my perspective, once again, it's really hard to watch you smile and talk about, you know, excitedly talk about eco-turf when I have a private well feet from the Shedler property. So while we talk about the budget for Shedler, I'd like to know if there's any money allocated for people who might get sick. On the eco-turf topic, for those who think it's safer, I do agree with what Pam Perrone said last week on the 13th, after attending info sessions organized by you, Shaban. She said that session, and forgive me, I don't have my reading glasses on, sessions with the manufacturer of eco-turf, they've done impressive in-house research, and you read a good deal of their literature, but you went on to say they assured us that the 6 regulated PFAS compounds will not be intentionally be used in their products, though they cannot contractually guarantee the absence of PFAS in the products that they would sell to us. You went on to state, artificial turf remains a fossil fuel product, a plastic covering of the earth to prevent plant life from growing. These fake fields create heat islands, which undoubtedly add to global warming and exacerbate the climate crisis. You further went on to say, as the plastic degrades over time, its micro parts end up in our waterways, soil, and maybe our bodies. You further cautioned that just last week, UN Secretary General Guterres said that the world's environment is at a breaking point. EcoTurf is greenwashing. It is a euphemism. This alternative fill has not been studied, and we do not know how it will affect people, animals, insects, etc., or how it will affect our environment. You mentioned that while the 2017 plan considered EcoTurf, at that time, PFAS was not in our vocabulary, which is why you voted no, Pam. So I thank you for that. And I thank Lorraine once again for supporting the Shedler neighbors. So having said that, I guess I feel like this is a giant fuchsia elephant in the middle of the room once again. We're telling you we have private wells. You voted on the turf. I don't know if it's a matter of throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick with SHPO. You know, once again, I hope they don't approve it. But there are health and safety issues in the Shedler neighborhood that cannot be ignored. So while you voted, you know, on something that I don't wholeheartedly agree on, yes, I thought that there should have been a park. You're putting people's health and safety at risk, and I'd like to know when the conversation, you know, you talked about the SID before and feasibility study and assessment, and let's go in small and see how it works. That's not what's happening here. So, you know, once again, we're neighbors. How are we going to address this? I would like some answers. The only thing I've heard is, you neighbors should tell us what we should do with the house. One suggestion would be, Evan, you're on the Historical Preservation Committee. Have you discussed any of these topics with those people? You know, you don't have to answer me, might be food for thought. I know Ellie Gruber did mention that there were a couple of options. I don't know if you've spoken, you know, reached out to her. She is the president of the Zabriskie Shedler House, so you might want to tap into her intellect there. And the last point that I wanted to make about committees, and we talked about the us and the them before, again, if we're going to move forward in a positive direction with people respecting one another, which is what I hope is going to happen from now on, I really do hope so. You know, one thing that I will mention is I did attend the Fields Committee meeting, and I did hear, Shaban, you tell the people, I'm not going to tell you what to say, but you should be at that September 13th meeting. But then I also heard, and I was not at the Shade Tree Committee, that both Matt Rogers and you, Shaban, told, and I'm not picking on you, so please don't feel that way, but you know, these are things that we hear, that those people were told on that committee, you don't have a voice, you're not to say anything. So I may be incorrect, and I don't know if I'm kind of telling the story correctly, but I believe that they were told not to have any input. So it kind of doesn't make sense. So that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Christina Millian, 530 West Saddle River Road. I also wanted to talk about the EcoTurf comment. Dr. Sarah Evans has spent over 12 years at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and I know she wrote to you all. And so I just want to ask, why are we listening to the advice of turf vendors who have a financial interest of us buying a potentially poisonous product next to our neighbors on private well water? And when are you setting up a meeting with Dr. Evans? Are you? I'd like to know that. I don't understand why we're listening to turf vendors. The other topic I wanted to quickly address was the issue of the house and what's going on there. On the August 2nd meeting, there was a comment made that you haven't heard from the neighbors about how we're going to use the house. And so on August 4th, I wrote to you, Councilwoman Winograd, and subsequently Village Manager Keith Kasmark, about setting up an information session with neighbors. And I know you've had a busy time here, and it was promised that we would potentially do it after Labor Day. But in the email, I asked for an information session for the neighborhood because we need to gain insights on the house dimensions, layout, and amenities so we can make informed recommendations on what potentially could go in there. The floor plan that's available to the public has no measurements listed, and we don't know what a catering kitchen means in practice. Is this an individual kitchen? Is it a normal one? What appliances do we have? And basically having access to information and data will help us drive you to make decisions. It will help us come together as a community and hopefully bring together some good ideas that we can all agree on and get behind so that everyone feels included in this journey. And so I would just hope that maybe we could revisit that email. I know you're very busy with a ton of things, but I don't want to bypass that the neighborhood now actually has reached out, this is the second time, to ask that we are included in that conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And now we're going to go to our hybrid access. And the first person up is Susan.
Thank you for knowing it's no name. Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. I just have a few comments. One, thank you for addressing the footbridge. That is something that is very welcome news. I just want to confirm that I know that's still under consideration, West Saddle River Road. Residents have dealt with that dilapidated road for decades. I mean, ever since I moved here, which is well over 10 years ago. And so it's a little disheartening to say it's going to be held off till Shedler. I don't think residents should be punished for Shedler. And again, I drive down to Hohokus. They just built, 11 new homes on the West Saddle River Road, and their thing is a mint compared to ours. And we have no excuse why it's so dilapidated. The second is parking for employees. I'm a little disheartened because I know when I speak to employees, when I go downtown, they tell me that they only get 2 parking passes to park. And a lot of the employees, some of them work in individual shops, have to close shop so they can move their car to find other parking spaces because they're only allocated a certain amount of time to park in each parking space. And I understand that, when you have free parking, you don't want the employees there. Has there ever been a conversation to find designated parking for employees? Many probably make minimum wage. And I know people in the restaurant industry make less than that because they rely on tips. Yet that burden's put on them. And a parking ticket on top of it could be defeating how many hours of work. I don't know if the parking garage has extra spaces that aren't being used at certain times to give these people a relief. I mean, it doesn't affect me directly, but that's still a little disheartening to say, oh, well, it's the free parking, employees use it. Well, yeah, but they need to be accommodated too. As for the billboard, I'm very disheartened by all the information with the money that is being dedicated to the attorney. I drove through Hartford, Connecticut last year, and they have similar billboards on display. And the billboards all displayed weed dispensaries that were in the area. And I mean, BF is very close to that billboard. And the last thing kids need to be exposed to at that age is places on where to buy weed and or websites. So I do really want to think that that people won't be funding this, because that's very disheartening. And then the last, and I will iterate from Christina, tenants, I mean, we would suggest a usage for the house, but the house has been really a mystery to us. We drive by it, we don't know what's inside. We're told that the rooms are small, but we don't know what the rooms look like. I know other residents in Ridgewood somehow got a tour of the place, were allowed in, but residents who live here are not. So, yes, we would love to see the house, and maybe then we can figure out what can it be used for. But until then, I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's not like Lord and Taylor and you knew what it was and there's a big empty space there. The house itself is a mystery. Anyway, I've said enough. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Catherine, you're next up.
Catherine Schmidt, 123 South Irving Street. First, I'd like to put in a plug for alternative sidewalks so that we can keep our shade trees. I agree that we had a very mild winter, and so it's important to go at least another year, if not longer, to see what the current porous sidewalks can do. But I implore us to not give up on this. Yes, they look different, but there are many different colors, many different styles. I would also say that as you're thinking about policies and whether, how, if to subsidize, one of the things to consider is what is the village's cost in taking down a tree, and factor that cost into the whole package of, so how do we manage this on a policy basis? But again, I would just hope that neither the council nor the administration gives up on the idea that if we want to have large, mature shade trees and sidewalks, we may just have to start coming up with something different. I'd also just like to put in a plug for the SID, the Special Improvement District. There are wonderful organizations in town, the Chamber of Commerce and the Guild, that do a lot for our downtown, but they are membership-based organizations and they focus on what's important to their membership. Not every business in the downtown is part of that membership, and many members of that membership are not part of Ridgewood. I don't dispute that they should be focusing on their membership, but that's what they do. On the other hand, a special improvement district would definitely focus on all the businesses in that improvement district. And I'd also like to make a pitch for, and I think we saw some of this manifesting itself over the summer with Destination Ridgewood. So much of what goes on in our village is based on the contributions of volunteers. And at some point, volunteers just burn out, either because we don't have enough of them or because the ones we have are just doing too much. So I think having a professional organization that could look after our downtown would be a wonderful thing to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Rurik, you're up. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Catherine. It's late.
Okay.
It's late. Rurik, you're up.
Yeah, Rurik Holloway, 1 Franklin Avenue. I'm kind of surprised about all the questions being asked right now about the house. 4 or 5 years ago, I made a very strong case that not a penny should be spent on the house until you can decide what use it can be used for, what it was going to cost, and what the operating and maintenance costs will be. And these are things, and so it is very, very important we find out why is it so much money has been spent on the house without any answers being provided to the neighbors. Now, as you all know, I did walk around the house because for the record, there was no sign that says no trespassing. I also asked permission of the people working there. Now, for the record, and I'm really addressing these comments to Keith as our village manager, I did not go up to the 2nd floor because the stairs were so steep and I have to walk with a cane. Plus, the railing was way too low. I just can't imagine the railing being up to code. Secondly, I looked down into the basement. The basement has an unfinished floor. It's dirt floor, basically. And looking at the walls look kind of whitish, look like a lot of mold was growing on them. And I had heard way back that the house had some black mold, which could be really very, very damaging to people's lungs, including people like myself. And so, plus, then we find out that, you know, one of the members of the committee of the council was told, the house is insulated, excepting for hard-to-reach places. Well, hard-to-reach places are like 50% of the house, which is a lot of nonsense. Whoever told that to the village council member should be punished, basically, because I know a house like that, it should be button tight with insulation. And the fact that the attic is not insulated is just ridiculous. The fact that the windows are Marvin windows, but they're single pane, and they had to add storm windows, which really don't work at all, basically is terrible. And I know the downstairs is so small. I remember one apologist for the previous administration said, we can have weddings there. And this is where I came up with my ridiculous comment about weddings for gerbils. I mean, at the house. So my point is, yes, you should open the house to the neighbors, should have them look, and you should have them ask. You're not responsible for the mess we're in. It's the previous administration that's responsible for the mess we're in, which again makes me say, and I know I had a big debate with a good friend of mine on the council who I support fully, but who I've also disagreed with. Please think seriously about putting together a white paper by some independent accounting firm or by an independent law firm as to what happened in the last 15 years, very factually. And this information should be made public and should be provided to the neighbors. The neighbors, I'm sure, are all good people. And I cannot believe the neighbors in the north side of the east side of 17 are represented by these blowhards who are just coming up with all this nonsense about, the fact that we have a sports complex. What do you mean a sports complex? I mean, the fact that a smaller field versus a bigger field makes it a sports complex? Are we selling peanuts? Are we selling hot dogs? Are we selling beer? I mean, do we have these huge, it's silly. And again, I would also look into things like how decisions were made. I mean, everybody now is talking about the trees. How about the hundreds of trees that were cut down in the last 6 years and not a peep from any of the neighbors? Where were these terrible people who are coming up and who are just feeding the flames? Where were the people when the berm was built? It was I, Rurik Halaby, who fought as hard as I could for a wall that would have insulated the neighborhood from noise and would have provided safety. And now we have this berm. Frankly, one of the people who's always coming up and talking about, oh my God, you go through with the plan, and you know something, the house prices will collapse. Well, if I was looking for a house in Ridgewood and I drive up West Ridgewood Avenue and I see the berm with all the weeds growing on it, I'll make a U-turn as quickly as I can, even though I know there are some great houses.
If you could finish up, your time is done.
And some great neighborhood. So my point is, please put together this white paper, get it done. You'll find the money somewhere. The taxpayers in Ridgewood are entitled to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rurik. Denise, your hand was raised. It is not anymore. I assume you were done. No, you're back. Denise, you're up.
Hi, Denise Lima, 319 East Glen Ave. I don't know what to say about the prior person that was just up. I think when you talk about keeping the temperature down, allowing a resident to call other residents that are having a very difficult time with the Shedler property blowhards and not calling a point of order on the prior person is really disheartening, because they are struggling. And I know we have differences of opinions, but we really shouldn't be allowing people to be calling those residents names like that.
That's what drives the us and them. That's what drives the temperature up. And nobody on the council calling a point of order to that is concerning for me. I don't know how you're going to keep the temperature down if you allow this us and them conversations. So we need to figure this out. People need to be empathetic with the neighbors. A sports complex is something that's not a small 2017 small grassy field. It's a large field. It's multi-purpose. It's definitely a sports complex that is not going to be a passive park. But I urge you as the mayor and the council to start calling points of order when people start calling people names, whether it be the council people or neighbors to one another. But we really need to start doing something different. So very, very, very disappointed in that conversation. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Denise. And with that, I'm going to close public comment. I have one point I would like to make, and that is that, Ann, you said that I was in favor of the billboard. I have never publicly nor privately made any comment at all about that billboard, ever. And I would never, because the Zoning Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body, and so I would not inject my opinion, publicly or privately, into that conversation. So I just want to clarify that point, that has never happened.
Mayor,
Does anyone else have anything?
I'm sorry.
I
Go ahead,
do.
Councilwoman.
Evan, do you want to say something too? Okay. So I'm going to try to go in order and go slowly. So one, I believe, and I don't know if this is totally true, but when I was on the HSA board at the high school, PSE&G did not allow parking on the right-of-way. So I don't know if that's still the answer, but when Liam was a sophomore, which is about 4 years ago, we wanted to allow parking to relieve it, and PSE&G said it wasn't allowed because they need to be able to immediately access that. So I just wanted to add that. Two, with respect to the website, I thought because we had asked for the dimensions that the new floor plan with the dimension was going to be added to the website, because I do agree, and I was on that email. Three, with respect to the turf, we're in an odd place right now where the plan isn't approved by SHPO, so it's silly to double down and assume it's a given that it's going to be approved. But there are steps that we are taking to see where we're going to end up, and we want to get some of the work done concurrently. So with respect to turf and eco-friendly, when and if the plan is approved, because we don't have final say, we will come out in front with more detail like you saw with the SID today. So I really do, Cynthia, I apologize for this. It's sort of, do we wait and see what SHPO says, or do we work concurrently? And when we work concurrently, the full council is limited, so that's why there's only 2 of us there. I don't mean to be smiling or expressing anything, but I do want to be transparent that these sidebar meetings are happening. So again, I hope that makes sense, that to go full-blown, say we've made a selection, we can't do that right now, but to leave this time and not look for eco-friendly and certifications and ask all those hard questions. Do you have an independent lab? We need to do those meetings now. We've spent hours in meetings, and we have the time now, which is why we're doing it. With respect to several other things, have we ever talked to Friends of Zabriskie Shedler about a use? Yes, incessantly. Before I was on council, since we've been on council, we've written them, we've interacted with them. Ellie is identified as, I know Ellie in different ways. We are always amenable to those discussions. And with respect to the comments about my influence with my boards and committees, I am the liaison to several committees. A liaison is a non-voting member. You don't have a say. I think all of my committees, I am not overarching. I represent council issues. I'm a conduit for information. At no point would I ever suggest what a committee can and cannot do. With respect to what was said with Shade Tree, that statement's false. The person who wrote it to us, I did write back. I want to be clear. The Shade Tree Commission has discussed and put Shedler on its agenda twice. I have not said anything to any effect of swaying them. They have not come to their own conclusion. Matt Rogers came because we're creating a trifold for the sole definition of what is a shade tree. The email that was forwarded to me by hardworking volunteers who stay and dedicate, and they're passionate about trees. We joke. At no point would Matt Rogers and I ever, quote, tell a committee to shut up. We have told all of our committees, me especially, they'd like to personally come and speak on their own. That's great. If a committee would like to issue an opinion, they have to read consensus by themselves. At no point would I interfere with that. At no point did I interfere with that. And because Matt's not here, that accusation is just completely unfounded and untrue. It's hard for these committees to be put in the middle like this. It's very, very hard. And I think that meeting was generally upsetting. Matt has made himself very available with Adopt a Sapling. They've worked very well with him. And to receive a note that's circulating in the community that says the exact opposite is hurtful. We did go back to the person, both of us, and try to address this, and we've heard nothing. But at no point as a liaison would I ever tell my committees what to do. They're committees, they're structures, they vote. They did not take a vote, they did not wish to place it on the agenda for a vote, and I just want to say to the people spreading that rumor, that's hurtful to me, to my hardworking committee, and that's why people don't want to be involved, because when these editorialized versions get out in the community, it's hard. I also want to, even though Matt's not here, I want to say the committee is very grateful, Shade Tree is very grateful for the help that our lawyer has given us. And again, the trees are owned by us. Programs like Adopt a Sapling are wonderful, and they were only made passable because he comes and engages with them. So that's it, and I want to say thank you to my Shade Tree, and I'm sorry that because this topic is so controversial that they were placed in the crosshairs of an unfortunate, untrue rumor.
Thanks, Siobhan. Anyone else? Pam?
Yes. Denise, I absolutely agree. I wasn't thinking fast enough, and I apologize. And Rurik, you cannot badmouth people.
Mayor, if I could have less than 2 minutes, I promise.
By all means.
With regard to Mr. Loving's inquiries, one, I'm not aware of the parking issue on the PSE&G right-of-way, but I will review that, and I will also talk to Chief Lyons about what our past practice has been with regard to enforcement. On the maintenance of that property, I have been in touch with the government relations representative for PSE&G, who is responsive, and we've been going back and forth on some issues with maintenance on that property. I will bring up the potholes. Councilwoman Winograd took me on a tour of that not too long ago, and I do know exactly what you're talking about. So that will be conveyed back up to PSE&G. With regard to the street signs, as the new manager, it is very difficult to find certain streets when there are not street signs, so I condone everything you said with regard to that. I did ask Signal for an inventory of all missing street signs. They have furnished that to my office, and I am in conversations with Chris about a plan to replace those signs so that we can make it convenient for folks and have the streets be easily identifiable. I did speak to Nancy Bigos. She was on vacation right after Labor Day, which is well-deserved, and she and her staff are putting together the grading numbers. To Christina and to Susan, the reason that we have not invited the public into the house is we do not have a certificate of occupancy from the building department. Once the construction official issues that certificate of occupancy, then we will open it up for the public to come in and have those discussions that we committed to in the email. But I can't do that safely without a CO from Tony Merlino. And finally, to Susan, and I have gone over this through email, and I have made a commitment that I will bring to engineering the inclusion of West Saddle River Road for the 2004 capital paving program. I don't know why my commitment continues to be doubted by certain people in that neighborhood, but I have put it in writing. So I cannot make any guarantees to what the final capital paving plan will be, but you have a commitment from the village manager that that road will be put on a priority list as I discuss this with engineering. It's not being put off because of Shedler, but we can't ignore the fact that a major project may be undertaken at that location depending on how this process moves forward. And I also won't condone a paving program where we have a seam in the road because we want to get to pave the road and not pave the bump outs that would provide additional parking if that facility were to be built. However, that decision should dovetail when we are putting together the capital budget in the late winter, early spring, with any decisions that the state will make as we get guided on what happens with the council's decision on Shedler. That's all I have.
Thank you, Keith. And Pam, you're absolutely right. Denise, you're right. I should have stopped. Rurik, come on. Bringing the temperature down applies to everyone. Forgive me for not jumping on that sooner. Let's not use name-calling anybody. And with that,
Okay, just before I read the resolution, I just want to mention there is a Central Business District employee parking. It actually is on the 4th floor of the garage in Walnut Street and also in Cottage Place. They can purchase a permit in order to park there, and then in addition, we have hang tags, or they can pay the kiosks or pay by Park Mobile. So I just want to make everyone aware, there is Central Business District employee parking, and many actually avail themselves of using that. So, resolution. Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on September 27th, 2023 at 7:30 PM or soon thereafter as a matter on the agenda can be reached, and that the closed session will be held in the caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be it further resolved that the matter to be discussed in closed session is limited to personnel matters to include police department. This matter is allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 and be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public once such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Perrin, may I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.